Ladies and gentlemen, we do have some pretty big news stories today, but before we get started, I have a very horrible and sad announcement to make, and it breaks my heart to say this. Earlier today, Roberto Jr. suffered a heart attack, and he died instantly. And we're all very sad. Roberto Jr., for those that are familiar, is the rooster that we bred and raised. He was only just over 2 years old, and we were kind of shocked by it. We knew that he may have been a little sick. We weren't entirely sure if anything was completely wrong with him, but he had been acting a little bit more docile lately, and he was having his feet cleaned, and he just had a heart attack and died. We attempted to perform, I kid you not, chicken CPR. We have oxygen. We tried giving him oxygen. Nothing worked. There seemed to be nothing we can do, and we're all very heartbroken to have to tell you, everybody, because as you know, we had a 95-foot tall billboard of Roberto Jr. in Times Square. He is the mascot for our coffee brand. He is on our Rise with Roberto Jr. breakfast blend. He is the mascot for the entire coffee brand, and he is on our website as one of our cast members. And we treated him like the main guy for Chicken City. He was the main guy, and it just happened in an instant. I'm not a foremost expert on chickens, but we tried everything we could, and there's not much you can do. Roberto Jr.'s mom died of cancer, and we knew that when he was born, he may have had some developmental issues, but he seemed like a good dude, and he ended up having a bunch of kids himself. So his name will be carried on by Roberto III, who has yet to been given the title. But in all seriousness, it is sad. We liked Roberto Jr. He was the king of the flock, and it's a sad report. So you can support us by going to Casper.com. You can buy Rise with Roberto Jr. He will be immortalized in this blend that we will keep. The king is returning. His father, Roberto, will be brought back to take care of his family in the meantime. And sorry to everybody who's a fan of. We even have emojis for Roberto Jr. So that's the unfortunate news. As for the actual news, and moving on to the show, again, rest in peace, Roberto Jr. You were too young. Andy No, he lost his trial against several alleged Antifa members. I say alleged because of the trial. The defense attorney proclaimed that they were Antifa, told the jurors that they would remember their faces, even though the jurors expressed fear that they would be targeted and doxxed by Antifa. I'm not surprised at the results. Andy No was mercilessly and brutally attacked on more than one occasion, but this is Portland we're talking about. Who in a jury would dare stand up to a known terror organization that goes around beating people, especially when you're at a trial where the man they've beaten is saying, please help me, and they're looking at you saying, we won't forget what you've done. That's apparently what happens in this country. These people, I mean, are they going to be criminally charged? What's going to happen? However, even though Andy No lost, several of the defendants have been found in default. So there still may be a net benefit there for Andy No. He may win in some respect. We got a bunch of other news, too. They're convening another grand jury, or I should say the same grand jury is convening in D.C., presumably to go after Giuliani or even bring more charges against Trump. And this one's massive, ladies and gentlemen. Anheuser-Busch has been forced to sell off several of its craft brands. They ain't doing too well. Before we get started, my friends, head over to castbrew.com to buy our coffee. You can see here the immortal image of Roberto Jr. will never be forgotten. He is the main personality behind our Rise with Roberto Jr. On the back of each bag is a picture of Roberto Jr., our rooster. Rest in peace. If you would like to support us in this grieving time, you can buy Rise with Roberto Jr. whole bean or ground. We have a bunch of other flavors. When you buy Casper Coffee, you're supporting the show. We really do thank you all so much for your support and for buying the coffee. Sales have been pretty good. And we're going to hopefully launching our physical location sometime in October. Who knows? We're like a year delayed on everything. That's how it goes. But don't forget to head over to TimCast.com, click join us, become a member to support us directly. When you click join us, you can see there's Roberto Jr. We'll never forget you, buddy. We're gonna immortalize you, and we'll build a little statue for you or something. Sad days, man. Bucko is actually doing pretty well. It's just so brutal, man. Become a member, and you can get access to our members-only uncensored show, which will be up at 10 p.m. live tonight on the front page of TimCast.com. Not so family-friendly. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Joining us tonight to talk about this and so much more is Tom Fitton.
Good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Who are you,
sir?
Glad
to be back here. President of Judicial Watch, America's largest and #1 most effective government watchdog group. We've been around, just celebrated our 29th year.
Wow.
So I've been there 25 years.
And for this, they made you testify in front of a grand jury.
That's the thanks. That's the thanks I get from the Justice Department.
Yeah, so definitely we'll talk about that with the grand jury convening once again in D.C. It'll be interesting.
Yeah.
So thanks for hanging out. We got Clint. He's back.
I'm back. Clint Russell, host of Liberty Lockdown, co-host of Tower Gang, Mises Caucus, LP National member, and just thrilled to share the stage with the great Tom Fitton tonight.
Oh, that's nice. Thanks.
Phil is here, of course.
How you doing? I'm Phil Abonte, lead singer of All That Remains, anti-communist and counter-revolutionary. My buddy.
Hey, buddy. Good to see you too, Phil. Hey, everyone. Ian Crossland, happy to be back. Give me some F's in chat for the chicken. I feel bad. I actually stood with him after he had died. Do you think was it still him after they die? Is it still him, or is he gone now? And it's just
He was such a chill dude. We raised him, so he was super chill around people. He was never scared.
Yeah.
You could walk into the coop, he'd just look up at you and walk around because we used to hold him in our hands. He was born in front of us, and then we actually raised him indoors, and then he became the king of the coop, displacing his dad Roberto. And this was just completely shocking. When Kim was going to wash his feet because he's covered in muck, and she's carrying him, he was totally fine. And then after she was done washing his feet, he just all of a sudden goes, "Ah," and then died just like that.
that was rough.
He wasn't like just completely shocking. We've had to clean a bunch of the chickens when they get mucky and really, really filthy, and they've got stuff stuck to their butts and stuff like
You
that.
gave him a great life, Kim. Thank you, and thank you for doing everything for those chickens that you're doing and all the animals around here.
It was
You're
beautiful
really
watching them try to resuscitate. I was like, this is love right here.
We have oxygen canisters for like sports oxygen, and Kim, put it in his mouth and tried giving him CPR, and we looked online and everything. We just did nothing we could do.
great. Well, mad love, Roberto Jr. I'll see you again someday. Hey, let's get this story started.
Are you going to have a burial or something?
I think we'll figure something out. His dad's coming back, so fortunately Roberto's still around. He's got a bunch of brothers, but Roberto Jr. was the heir to the throne.
Roberto's going to come back and be like, "You had one job, son."
Well, he's got grandkids, and Roberto Jr. has a couple sons.
After
so-
Roberto Jr. had passed away, we had him outside. And everyone was standing around like, well, I guess he's gone. And then all the chickens, I don't know if it was all of them, but a bunch of them came out of the coop and all lined up along the fence. And
started squawking.
Yeah. And the roosters were screaming
for real,
for like an hour.
It actually happened.
Yeah.
I'm totally serious. I was there. I wouldn't believe it if I hadn't been there. I saw it happen.
They like lined up. So there's the chicken coop, and then if you open the door, there's just thin fencing so the chickens can go out in the grass. And they were doing their thing. And then at some point, I think one of the chickens realized, I don't know what chickens think, but they were just doing their thing while we were trying to resuscitate Roberto Jr. And then all of a sudden, the chickens started lining up, looking towards where Roberto Jr. was laying by the patio, and then they started all squawking.
And the roosters were crowing for like a couple hours after that, or at least an hour and a half. All of them, I think. I don't know how many are out there, but it was a bunch of different ones. Were all doing their crows.
They were yelling, "The king has died."
Do they react if another bird is injured?
Typically, they kill them and eat them.
Oh, so maybe they were hungry.
Yeah, like finally that son of a bitch is gone.
Tastes like chicken.
Rapist.
Tastes like chicken.
Yeah, Junior was rough on the ladies, but he was known for his greatness.
Chickens are not known for their intelligence.
Roberto Jr. is, when he had a bent toe when he was born, which is a sign of malnutrition, malnourishment. Like it was.
Egg, yeah.
Well, his mom, I think he was like one of the first eggs she laid, maybe. So I'm not entirely sure. But he also had an issue he had a respiratory issue we knew about when he would crow. When he first started learning to crow, he would pass out, and so we were worried he had some circulatory problems.
Interesting.
So we did what we could. But anyway, we got Serge hanging out.
Yeah, rest in peace, my chicken friend. I apologize for, I guess, not being more of a friend to you. I didn't know him very well, but yeah, happy he's in a better place. Let's hope that.
Yeah.
Now
His name will be carried on by his children.
You have an opportunity to get to know the other 50 that are out there, the unnamed, the unwashed masses.
Well, there's gonna be a Roberto the Third. Someone's gonna be named his heir.
Dude, I gotta say, Luke is the man. He looks like a dog, like a fluffy, like one of those Pomeranians.
Little Luke is a rooster.
Yeah,
and he's named Little Luke because he's a Polish rooster, and the Polish roosters have blonde, parted feather hair and big noses. And so Luke was like, "Hey, he looks like me. He's got blonde hair and a big nose." And we're like, "We're gonna call him Luke."
That's wild.
And he's Polish. All right, let's jump to this first story. We got this from the Post Millennial. Breaking: Portland jury finds Antifa militants not liable in Andy No attack. Defense attorney declares, "I am Antifa." The defendant's attorney told the jurors their faces will be remembered. I want to show you this tweet. So this is the Post-Millennial says, Andy Ngo was harassed this morning on his way into court by alleged members of Antifa. The jury told the judge that they are concerned about being doxxed and said that people are trying to find out who they are. This is the current state of American politics in these cities. You have a defense attorney who tells the jurors, here you go. Burroughs told the jurors that she will remember each one of their faces. Burroughs not take the time to provide evidence as to why the two defendants should be free from charges, but rather use the time to defend anti-fascism and attack Ngo's credibility as a journalist. So the trial, for those that are not familiar, is these alleged Antifa members who had assisted in the brutal attack outside of a hotel, had provided support to other individuals who are accused of violently attacking him, and one of the individuals admitted to actually physically attacking Andy Ngo on one occasion. The jury reached a verdict in the case of Andy Ngo versus Rose City Antifa, in which they found both defendants, John Colin Hacker and Elizabeth Renee Richter, not liable in the civil case brought against them. Now, I will say, I don't know the full details of how everything was laid out, but I will call out absolutely when you have a defense attorney telling the jurors who are terrified of Antifa that they're going to remember their faces.
Is that during the trial?
Yes.
That's got to be juror intimidation.
I thought Antifa was an idea, but it turns out this idea has attorneys.
Well, that's the argument they made. They made that we're not part of an organization. We are just anti-fascists.
We had sued, we had tried to get documents about an Antifa member who was, I guess, had beaten up someone. And she was a teacher. So we wanted documents about what was going on at the school. And Antifa intervened. They had lawyers. We spent a lot of time fighting. And she got sanctioned for doing this. And not only is it obviously an organization, but on top of this defense lawyer doing something which is exceedingly improper, I don't understand how could have gotten a fair trial here. Remember, they had to clear the courtroom. The court stopped letting the public in because Antifa was showing up and engaging in violent outbursts. So, what would you do if you were a juror? You'd probably think, I got a wife and family, I got kids at home or whatever. I'm getting out of here, and finding them, not guilty or not liable is an easy way out.
What do you do in the case where it does appear that there's intentional juror intimidation? What do you do if a judge isn't doing their job and intervening to defend them? Like, what happens in that case?
I'm no lawyer, but my guess is there could be something could appeal here, that there was improper, he didn't get a proper trial given the threats of violence directed at the jury and the disruption of the court, which obstructs justice as well. It's an interesting case. It seemed to me a straightforward, assault case. I'm not quite sure why the jury found the way he did.
Is this the same?
There could be, the liability as to how what the jury had to decide. Maybe they made the right decision, but no way was the appearance of a fair trial here.
I see. So this civil order could have been like, it was a mob, it was chaos. He got attacked in the middle of the chaos. Nobody intended for any of it. Kind of
maybe there was enough distance from the actual assaults that they could say I wasn't involved directly, and the jury could have bought that. But that's assuming that the justice was fairly administered in the courtroom and not compromised by the implicit threats of the attorney and the actual threats of the violent outbursts of Antifa members who were showing up in the court that became so severe that the court had to stop the public from gaining access to the courtroom other than media were allowed in.
Wow.
So when was that? How far through the trial did they start showing up and disrupting?
I mean, this all occurred within the last week, 7 to 8 days, right?
That's when I started reading about it.
Yeah.
That's jury intimidation also.
How long has his trial's been going on since at least July 31st, I think, because Katie Daviscourt from Post-Millennial is covering it, and it looks like she started on the 31st is when the trial started, I think.
Dude, there's no way I can wrap my head around this. I mean, I'm getting this from the Post-Millennial, which, full disclosure, Andy Ngo works for. I think he might be part owner of the company or something, but I don't know, maybe he's not owner. That it's almost like too bizarre. Like, the prosecuting attorney says to the jury, I'll remember all of your faces. As if the jury's not going to crap themselves and be like, what do I have to do for her not to come after me later? Like, what did I do wrong?
But it's also the facts of the case. Andy Ngo being like, here's a video of me being mercilessly beaten in the street on more than one occasion. Here's a guy who admitted to attacking me in a gym. I need help. Then the defense attorney looks at the jurors and says, I'll remember all of your faces. And they're like,
Oh, the defense attorney. Yes, not the prosecutor.
The defense attorney. Then the jurors are watching these people mercilessly beat innocent people. And that's not in question. We watch them do it on camera. And then the jurors are told, we will never forget what you do this day. The jurors are basically thinking to themselves, I don't have anything to do with this. But they're cowards. That's about it. Cowardice.
I'm just like, maybe we need artificial intelligence juries. I can't take it anymore, this juror tampering crap.
Nah, artificial intelligence juries are not going to weigh justice. They're going to weigh
be hacked.
They're going to weigh ease of access.
But is it cowardice? Because if you can't get a fair trial and you're living in Portland, it seems like it would almost be the prudent decision to make to just be like, look, I think that they're probably guilty, but I don't want to have to.
Yeah, it's cowardice.
Well, it's cowardly, but also it's prudent, is it not? Like, would you?
No, it's not.
Well, was the jury
short-term gains? You're sacrificing your future, your neighbor's future, your children's future for what? A few moments of. Well, I'll put it this way: those who would give up essential liberties for freedom, for a small amount of security, deserve neither and will lose both.
Yeah. Well, I think that's fair, but I'm saying if you're in a position where you're already not able to get a fair trial in a case like this, it's kind of just time to leave.
I agree.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people who say, like, I can't leave, I have kids, and I can understand and respect that. And I respect people saying, I'm going to stay here and try and push back. But if you're on this jury...
Yeah, you should still cast the proper vote. I agree.
Yeah, don't be a coward.
Yeah.
And then if you're going to leave anyway, be like, nah, I'm going to find him liable. I'm going to get out. Look at this. Donald Trump's found liable for a sexual assault 30 years ago in the biggest department store in the country, in the country probably, where nobody saw him. The most famous guy in New York walks in a building. None of the story makes sense. And these people in New York are like, yeah, screw it, he's liable. And then Andy Ngo is on camera being chased and beaten by people. And they're like, nah, not these guys. One of the guys outright said, yeah, I was at a gym. I poured water on him and hit his phone out of his hand. And they're like, nah, you're fine.
Crazy.
But Donald Trump, you got to get him.
My view is that was the jury sufficiently protected given the fact that Antifa is a terrorist organization?
Apparently, they said they were terrorists.
And if Al Qaeda was in a trial or a terrorist group was in a trial, I think there would be a lot more security and protection for the jury and less tolerance from the court. But Antifa, we've been told time and time again, is, quote, anti-fascist, and they're doing the Lord's work when in fact, they're communist revolutionaries that kill people and beat them up if they get in the way. And so I don't see how Andy got a fair trial here. We can argue about whether the jury should have found guilty, liable or not liable. But in the end, that result has been compromised, and you can't trust the result. So we'll see what happens if there's.
You can't. I don't think you can trust. It's difficult for people to trust the courts at all nowadays. I think. Whether it be Andy's situation or the police officer that just got sentenced to whatever 5 years or 4 years of prison for just being on the scene of the George Floyd situation, just for being there, he got charged.
And I honestly wasn't at all certain that the Rittenhouse case was going to go the right direction. So
yeah, I mean, I
don't have any
thankfully,
faith.
Thankfully, I agree. I don't have any faith either. But yeah, I mean, there have been there are so many court cases that have gone the wrong way, like especially in the past 5 years or so. And I think that it's likely that Trump is going to be found guilty on something. I think with all the stuff that's
he's going to be found guilty on all of it.
Well, I mean, fair enough, but so, and they're all real thin charges. So I don't have a whole lot of faith in the judicial system anymore.
If he's found guilty on all of them, Tim, do you think we actually see Donald Trump in prison?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
I give me a scenario where Trump is not going to prison. What do you think, Tom?
I think the odds are significant. I don't think they're over 50 that he's found guilty and sentenced to prison. Whether he goes to prison or not, I think that would be pretty extraordinary. And certainly it's not. I don't think it's going to happen before the election. Although up in D.C. here, I think that judge is angling to get that trial done before the end of the year.
So I think it's fair to say it's unprecedented, and perhaps there will be a house arrest circumstance or something to that effect. Yeah. He's with Secret Service. He'll be confined to Mar-a-Lago. Who knows? I think that proves it's BS. right? Anybody who's convicted of trying to overthrow the United States government would face very, very extreme and severe charges, like remand at a military detention facility.
Right.
Donald Trump is like, you're free to go. We'll see about it, because all they're trying to do is jam up his chance at re-election.
And they don't want to piss off his followers, because if they did put him in jail without charge or trial, you'd have people on the street breaking stuff at the moment.
Well, that's what I'm so concerned about is like, I tend to agree with Tim that the prosecution and the conviction, in my opinion, seems more likely than not. But I can't envision what America and his supporters look like and react with if that transpires, either before or after the election. I don't know what this country looks like.
You could see like Vivek Ramaswamy step in and take the lead and win the presidency and pardon him, but
that's interesting.
Big ask. Yeah. It's
or he could win the presidency and pardon himself from jail. Yeah. You never know.
Joe Biden could theoretically pardon himself on all these accusations against him.
Or the next Democrat, if it's Gavin Newsom, he comes in, he's like he wants to be the great unifier, he pardons everybody.
Oh, that ain't happening. Gavin Newsom is not going to
He'd piss off so many people.
There is no way.
Gavin Newsom will pardon the Democrats and then send the DOJ after every Republican.
Exactly.
Because once you become the president, you want the Republicans on your side, even if you're a Democrat.
No, what makes, do you feel like Joe Biden has?
No, he's been terrible at it. He's just,
Did you feel like Barack Obama did?
A little bit.
Really?
In the beginning, he seemed to care about everybody, and then at some point he got partisan.
Ian, we're in the conquest stage of empire decline. I don't think that these people are going to be looking to reach across the aisle. Like the days of bipartisanship, I fear, have sailed.
But conquest, as in the United States, is going to take over other countries?
No. I just mean political conquest, where it's like we're going to control the reins, and we're going to beat the hell out of our opponents. And that's kind of seems what it is. Like it just ping pongs back and forth, but it's just about conquest. And
well, I used to not use the term communist too much in discussing the political opposition in this country, but I mean there is this rising communist approach, and I don't mean literally communist, but in the sense that the rules don't matter to us, and if we're in control of the tools of power, we're going to do whatever we want.
They're literally communists.
Yeah, I think Canada has a communist party in it.
They are communist, but at the risk of sounding like Jordan Peterson, it's a lot of postmodernism in the way that they approach political, dialogue or the way they approach politics. There's a lot of people that are making criticisms of, what was it, the most recent one? It's just very frequently the left tries to get people to be quote unquote held to their own standard, but they don't have a standard of their own, and that's that's because of the fact that they don't fundamentally believe in liberal principles. They have a counter enlightenment philosophy. So like they don't believe that you can reason. They don't believe that you can actually even have contact with reality. They believe that our perception is too colored by our experiences to ever really know what's true or real. So if no one can know what's true or real, then you can never actually engage in dialogue from a place of honesty.
Just a couple weeks ago, there was the RFK censorship hearings, and you had a bunch of Democrat politicians that were up there, Congress members, I believe, and they were genuinely arguing in favor of censorship because they're like, we have to prevent disinformation.
Yeah.
We were looking out for you. This was all good. And I'm just like, you're liberals?
It's entirely illiberal. And it goes completely and totally against everybody over 40 years old. When they think of a liberal, they think of people that are actually liberal, that would be like against censorship and want, government agencies would all like approach the problem looking to have a positive result. And I don't think that you can do that so much nowadays. And I think that's because the people that are in Congress frequently have, again, a different philosophy, a different worldview. They're not liberals, and that matters.
We talked about this last week, that Marxism is a path to communism, and so is technocracy. And I think a lot of people have been twisted by the technocratic nature of reality in the last 20 years with the internet and with social media and with spying, that now they're just going the direction towards communism because they think that they cannot govern without it. It has to be more control. And like Canada has, of their 4 largest political parties, the Communist Party of Canada is one of the 4. They're blatantly, just because you call your political party the Democratic Party doesn't mean you're not all communist. You can be communist and call your party whatever you want. So yes, you can have many communists in government.
I want to pull up this story here. This is from the Recount. Minneapolis judge sentenced Tao, a former police officer who held back bystanders as other officers pinned George Floyd to the ground, to 4 years and 9 months in state prison. I look at this judge, and I see a deeply, deeply evil individual. This cop, Tao, probably pronouncing his name wrong because there's some nuance to that name. It's Touthao. He's 37 years old. He's a 9-year veteran of the force. He arrives on scene, and all he did was hold back bystanders. And I don't believe he could even see what was going on or knew what was going on. He's gotten, I think, 3 years in prison at the federal level, and now just about 5 more years at the state level.
Wow. This
is it. If you go against the regime, or actually if you accidentally go against them, they just destroy your life.
Yeah. You know, this racialism, I think of it like this black hole theory of politics and justice and such. It's like racialism, politics, you know, it's like a black hole, and it distorts everything around it, including the justice system. And I don't see how I know how we're all supposed to think about the Floyd verdicts, but I don't see how anyone could look at those Floyd verdicts and think, well, that was justice, in the sense that the jury operated honestly and dispassionately, without pressure, again, of violence, and we forget about that part of this scenario, and just kind of what people understood about Floyd's situation at the time, and the obvious and the training that the police officers had that they seemingly were trying to follow. You know, I didn't support the verdict. It was, you know, you don't want to see someone die necessarily, but certainly in my view it wasn't murder or anything close to it.
Here's where I go crazy. This Tao gentleman, he was basically responsible for holding back the crowd while these other officers kneeled on him. And sure, maybe he didn't do everything perfect, and maybe ultimately he could have prevented it. I don't know. What drives me crazy is that this guy, even though he's not really culpable, I think if you're evaluating this fairly, he's not truly culpable for the passing of George Floyd, but he's going to do maybe 8 years. But then you have the murderer of Daniel Shaver in Arizona, which if you watch that video, it's one of the most egregious cop killings that has ever transpired in American history, as far as I'm concerned. And he walks free. Better than that, he also gets a pension for his psychological damage from doing what he did.
This is the guy who was told to crawl on the ground?
Yes. Yep. Simon Says execution.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know much about that. When did this?
There was a guy in a hotel room, and he had a pellet gun because he was a pest exterminator. Someone called into the police and said they saw someone with a gun. So these cops show up, scream at him with rifles pointed, saying, "On the ground, put your hands up, put your hands down, crawl towards me, now put your hands up, now crawl towards me, now put your hands up." When the guy's pants start falling down and he pulls them up, the cop just unloads on him.
He was drunk. He had his shirt off, and he was wearing sweatpants at the time. He was in a hotel, and they had him on his knees. And so as he's crawling towards them with his hands up, his knees are dragging and pulling his pants down, his sweats down. So he goes and he reaches down to pull them up, and
while crying.
Yeah,
and the cop just unloads on him.
Terrified.
He was horrified.
Yeah.
This George Floyd thing, I think it's another example of how technocracy is leading us to communism, because what happens is the media chooses what clips get shared over and over and over again, and what can't be shared. I tried to talk about the fentanyl.
Media? The media?
Yeah.
You mean
we'll say Facebook.
Social media algorithms?
Yeah, Meta, for instance, censored my posts trying to talk about the fentanyl in his system. The guy was doing an 8-ball or a speedball or
against
something.
the rules. It's hate speech.
Behind the wheel of a car. So like the media that got pushed out was the few minutes that he can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. People go crazy, and then the cops, the job of the law enforcement is like protect the peace. They don't care about who's guilty or innocent. They don't want riots.
Yes.
So they
That's right.
This Tao is going to prison because they just want to avoid more social breakdown. That means, understand this, if you live in a city like Minneapolis, if you live in a city like Portland or Seattle, and you are a victim of violent crime from the likes of a far left extremist or even just a run-of-the-mill criminal, you could be the victim and there is no out for you. You fight back, you go to jail. You try and stop the criminals, you go to jail, just like the guys in the Ahmaud Arbery case. You cower in the corner of your house as people scream outside. The cops go into your home and they arrest you. That's what we've been seeing happen.
And of course, it's the black community in Minneapolis who suffer the most here because the police have been decimated there. They have virtual no protection from the police anymore. And so, you know, now we're veering towards anarchy in our major cities as a result of the soft on crime policies resulting, or not resulting from, where the Floyd killing was used as an excuse to advance this radical agenda of decriminalization of everything. They don't believe in putting anyone in prison for any reason.
Yeah.
It's not, they just don't oppose the death penalty. They don't want anyone in jail. And when you think the whole system's corrupt, all jails are corrupt and no one should go to them. This is a radical approach that's getting people killed right now as we speak.
Well, one minor clarification. It really is specifically dictionary definition anarcho-tyranny, because not only are they not enforcing violent crime laws, but they also disarm the people. So they can't even defend themselves. So on both ends of it, you're basically just set up to be a victim.
And then is that because from the leader's perspective, if you have one class violating another class, and then the other class decides to fight back, now you've got two classes of villains and you can arrest them all.
The criminals destabilize the system and keep people in a state of constant fear and chaos, unable to take any actions against the power structure. So long as there are people at the bottom fighting each other, the people in power are
because
protected.
we need grassroots movements to control the top. That's the whole point of the United States, is the people control the government. If the people are fighting each other, they're not going to be able to rein in that power structure. I'm just concerned that what Clint was saying, that the ship has sailed and the empire is now in the conquest stage.
I think like throughout history, what we have seen and what we've seen in our media depicting potentialities of revolution, I'm reminded of the scene from V for Vendetta where the inspector is narrating. He says, eventually someone does something stupid. It then shows the police officer, the finger man, shoot the little girl wearing the mask. And then all the locals just surround him with baseball bats, pipes, and crowbars. And then the camera pans up and the assumption is they beat him to death. When you get to a point where police officers are going to prison for literally doing nothing, when you've got stories of people who on January 6th were walking around confused. I learned this story just recently of a woman who I met. And she said that it was a few hours after the Capitol had been breached. They were walking around D.C. and they walked to the Capitol with nothing going on. There's no people. There's like people walking around. There's no cops. There's no barricades. No one saying anything. They walked up looking around and then left 4 misdemeanor charges.
We should have her on the show.
A year and a half in jail.
I was thinking we should have her on the show. I don't know how prudent it is to have someone on the show that's facing January 6 charges, but that story needs to be told.
An interview perhaps. But the question is, at what point do regular people say there isn't a justice system?
I'm getting there.
And I want to clarify this. The reason why the founding fathers thought innocent until proven guilty was so important was not because they like you. Partly because they like you and they're good Christians, God-fearing people who believed in individuality and rights. But no. There was something greater that the founding fathers talked about. If people believe that if no matter what they do, the government will punish or imprison them, then they have no incentive to be law-abiding citizens. If a criminal is treated all the same as an innocent person, then screw it. But if the system says we protect you if you're innocent, then there is every incentive for the individual to be an innocent person, knowing that we'll fight on your behalf. But that's changing now. With what this judge has done, with what they're doing in January 6th, they are telling the people, no matter what you do, we will punish you. No matter if you're innocent, confused, ignorant, or otherwise. If you're at your house in Milwaukee and BLM shows up screaming and threatening you, a group that had previously set fire to a house twice, the cops will come into your home and arrest you. That actually happened. Fair point. The guy living in the house brandished a shotgun through the window, not out the window, but up to the glass of his window. He showed the people protesting he was armed. So the police came, went into his house and arrested him, and the BLM activists cheered for it. These are people who had previously been at a house that they set on fire twice.
Yeah.
The guy that got arrested, his house was set on fire two times. Okay, all right.
BLM shows up, BLM affiliated activists essentially formed a mob. Showed up to a house where they believed 2 girls had been illegally held. It was not true. They set fire to the house. The fire department puts the fire out. They leave. The mob sets fire again. Fire department puts the fire out. That same group, similar group organized by similar people, show up to the house of a guy who had criticized Black Lives Matter, screaming and protesting in front of his home. In front of his window, he brandishes a shotgun in his own house. They call the police that he brandished a weapon. The cops walk up to his house and arrest him from in his own home. Wow. It is easier to arrest you, the target of the mob, than it is to deal with a riot.
Yeah.
I was watching these comments, some of them. And, when we talk about this stuff, this is the black pill. I can take it. I don't necessarily get black pilled. I can handle a little bit of it. I'm like, I'm wargaming this. Where does it go? Revolution? An upheaval and an overturning of the U.S. government to something that will never be nearly as good as the U.S. government. We have it so good right now.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Tom?
I think our republic is tottering, Ian. I think, if Trump is jailed and is unable to campaign or effectively has the election turned against them because of this jailing. There's not going to be riots. There's not going to be mass demonstrations. There's just going to be concern. And, the Constitution will have been left behind. We'll be in a post-constitutional system where American citizens who are on the wrong side of the Democratic Party, and this, I don't like to get partisan, but it's true. This is the Democratic Party using the Justice Department to jail their political opponents. And there are a lot of Americans who aren't going to, participate in the system, our political system, if they fear that they're going to get jailed. I think one of the ugly undersides of the indictment of Trump is Smith's targeting of citizens in the several states who were, best they understood under the law, trying to challenge an election and in a way that had been done many times before that could seemingly comply with federal, state, and constitutional law. And he suggested they were engaged in criminal conspiracy. So that's a signal. Don't challenge any elections that we've won, so to speak. Otherwise, you'll get jailed. But now, some people are going to say no, and they will continue to, but a lot will stay out of the game.
I want to jump to this story from the Daily Mail. We're talking about anarcho-tyranny. We're talking about the justice system no longer bringing justice, innocent people being locked up, and the machine being weaponized against the Democrats weaponizing the system against political opponents. But here's what I think could actually lead to actual revolution or civil war. Moody's cuts credit ratings of 10 U.S. banks and warns 6 more could face a similar fate. But firm insists U.S. banking system is not broken. This is disconcerting considering what happened with Silicon Valley Bank and several other banks earlier this year. But we also have this from TimCast.com. U.S. credit card debt hits record $1 trillion. Total U.S. household debt tops $17 trillion as Americans turn to debt to cover living expenses. Do you know what the one thing, there's a few things that precipitate civil war and revolution. You know what the simplest is? The most obvious and simplest catalyst for governmental breakdown?
Inflation would be my guess.
No food.
Oh, run out of food. Yeah.
When people are unable to buy food, we saw it in the Arab Spring. You see it in the French Revolution. It's not absolute, but typically when people struggle to make ends meet, they become angry and desperate. And when they're hungry, nothing else matters. So right now, maybe it's a little preliminary. We're seeing corporate and governmental collapse. We're seeing our institutions decay. We're seeing the judicial system decay. We're seeing the Democrats weaponize government against their political rivals. I will say this with absolute certainty that Democrats are cheating in the 2024 election. And what I mean by that is not that there's fraud or they're doing any weird ballot stuff. What they're doing is fairly obvious. They're literally arresting and criminally charging their political opponents. A fair and honest election is when...
They've done it 3 times
That's
already.
right.
4 next week.
A fair and honest election is when you say, choose me, I'm the best. Don't choose him, he's bad. And the other guy says the same thing. Then people will decide. That's a fair and honest election. What they're doing now is saying, we can't win, so lock him up and prevent him and hobble him in any way possible. That's cheating.
Yeah.
When you take all that into consideration, with the fact that our financial system is whacked out of proportion, there really is a substantial risk with everything going on. And there have been food shortages, especially with COVID and everything, that if the monetary system faces severe turmoil, people can't find houses to live in, people can't afford to pay rent, people can't afford to buy food. You add that into the mix with all the political turmoil and then something kicks off.
Yeah, I mean, not only that, but also there's the concern about inflation and stuff like that, because right now the dollar is only backed by confidence in the government and stuff. So we really do have a historically volatile situation on our hands. We got a couple generations or multiple generations since we've had economic inequality.
Of this level.
At this level. And that's something, whether or not I know that people's material poverty has gone down, but if you've got a society where there's significant difference between the highest earners and the lowest earners and stuff, you do get civil unrest and you get unhappy populations. You've got the changing of the global order when it comes to monetary policy with BRICS and with other, people starting to move away from the dollar. I don't see a whole lot of positive things on the horizon.
Let me double down on that real briefly.
Sick, thanks, man.
Yeah, the Federal Reserve held the federal funds rate at 0.25% for approximately a decade. since the Great Recession. They're just like, we're just going to keep it at zero, the zero bound forever. There'll be no problems from that, right? And then we're going to print $5 trillion in the year 2020. And we're going to lock down the economy, create supply chain shortages, which also add to the inflationary pressure. And then in a 12-month period starting in February of 22, they're going to start to hike the Fed funds rate very aggressively, a half point every time they have a meeting. And they're going to take it from a quarter point up to approximately 5.5, 6, which then takes the mortgage rates from 3.25 and it puts it up to 7.5, 8. It also makes it so that all of these T-bills and these short-term debt instruments that are held on all of these banking institutions, they are now bleeding all over the floor. That's the whole reason that Moody's is marking them down, by the way. It is strictly a Federal Reserve created crisis. I want to be very clear about that. This would not be happening. The American people would not be living off of credit cards and have $1 trillion of debt if it weren't for inflation. That's why all of this is happening.
And let me add to that. This is all politics. I'm surprised this hasn't happened sooner, because an honest evaluation of the way our banks are regulated, the decider about whether a bank is solvent is a political appointee in the Biden administration. And so all these decisions are political. The Silicon Valley Bank, that decision to shut that bank down was a political decision made as a result of lobbying by Democrats.
Yes.
And then the bank here on the East Coast that was subsequently shut down, Signature, that bank was perfectly fine, but they didn't like the fact that they were in the business of crypto. And they told them that, and that's the reason they were shut down. We knew from the 2008 shutdowns, because we got the documents, Judicial Watch did. They didn't know why they were shutting the banks down. They just didn't have a systematic way of shutting banks down or doling out financial support for the banks. It was, well, we want everyone to get the support so no one knows who the bad banks are. So the good banks should get money and the bad banks should get money, and we'll disguise who the bad banks are by making everyone else take the subsidy. It was completely political. The same goes with the Fitch knocking down our credit rating here in the United States. It's politics.
Yep.
It's politics. We've got politicians who have decided that printing money is, and it's politicians of both parties, the best way they can stay in power is to print money, and they don't care what the consequences
it's to
are.
buy votes.
And that's right. Transferring wealth,
chicken in every pot.
So on top of the increase as they were increasing interest rates, they kept the spigot flowing in terms of spending at the government level. And, there's no sign that it's going to be curtailed. No. It's not going to be curtailed. So now we're all supposed to be excited. They've increased, they've cut down our salaries by 4 or 5%, practically speaking, our spending power over the last year. And now we're supposed to be satisfied that we've lost that purchasing power, that they've been cemented, the prices have been cemented at a higher level. They're not getting lower. They're just not getting as high as quickly as they previously did. So, there's no easy way out for this, but there is, other than curtailing government spending, taking politics out of the regulation of the banking industry, meaning the government's got to get, spend a little less money trying to effectively tell everyone that we will insure all deposits, as opposed to making sure that banks that make bad decisions go the way of the dodo bird.
I keep thinking that maybe we could default on the debt to the Federal Reserve, or at least the interest to the Federal Reserve, and be like, suck it. But that's like telling the Swiss bank, the Bank for International Settlements, suck it. And would they then excommunicate the United States from the liberal economic order if we did something?
Probably.
It's not that hard. You just need to change the trajectory just a little bit. And for small government people, it's disappointing, because we can spend a whole lot of money if we just change the trajectory. Not too much as far as, conservatives would be, but in terms of like Social Security and government spending, just change the trajectory just a little bit. And it allows the government to spend money virtually world without end forever. But they don't even want to do that.
Well, what's so frustrating is like literally a 10% cut across the board, and we could balance the budget pretty quickly because they take in so much in tax receipts. And it's like, do you think that there's not 10% in excess spending in every federal department? Like, yeah. I'm sure there is. Just look at the war in Ukraine. Look at where all those billions are going. Like, you think they can't cut 50% of that and still get the same bang for their buck? It's just an absurdity. But I want to like really emphasize to the conservative audience that's listening right now, it's incumbent upon you guys to understand that it is Federal Reserve policy that is making it so challenging to have household formation, to get married, to have kids. All of these things that you guys consistently lament, you miss the biggest factor, is that inflation has forced both parents into the workforce, and it has made it incredibly and increasingly challenging to be a parent, to get married, to buy a home. All of these things are Federal Reserve policy.
But only
the government can do this type of
That's a large
damage.
component of it, but cultural issues.
Of course, it's very important too. Yes.
It's hand in hand.
I think cultural is the bigger issue.
Those central banks, they're all kind of controlling and manipulating the media, which is manipulating the culture because why are people not more up in arms about the Federal Reserve? If you knew that private bank was disrupting your life, you would have taken it back 100 years ago.
I would hope.
If we did not ever have the revolution in the workplace, women stayed at home, it wouldn't matter what the Federal Reserve tried to do. Women would not.
But that coincides with the inception of the Federal Reserve. 1913, you have the women's liberation. They start to hit the workforce. I think it's all part and parcel of the same dynamic.
Sure. But I mean, the cultural change has to happen first.
Maybe. I think one chases the other. It's like it's not necessarily a
World War I got people really, really culturally messed up right after the Federal Reserve was ready to go.
Yeah.
You got nothing politicians sitting at the knobs trying to manage the economy. They don't know what they're doing, and things get out of whack now and again because they don't know what they're doing. I mean, I remember in 2008, I read in the Wall Street Journal when they first started giving money away to the banks said to the Wall Street Journal, well, they didn't give us a choice. I said, well, isn't that interesting? So we sued, Judicial Watch sued for the records. Long story short, they said, we got the records. We want to meet with the top 9 banks. Bring them into the Treasury Department. And the chief of staff is like, okay, who were the top 9 banks? So they didn't even know who the top 9 banks were. So they bring him in, the heads of the top banks of the United States of America, and they said to them, we're going to give you subsidy. And you should know that if you don't want to take it, we're going to make it so that your regulators require you to do so. And they made them sign little permission forms, 2 or 3 lines. I agree. Jamie Dimon, agree to take $12 billion, whatever, contingent on approval from the board of directors. That's how they, quote, bailed out the banks. And it was never a bailout. It's a takeover.
Yeah.
Every time you hear about bailing out banks, substitute the word takeover, and you understand why we're in the state we are.
You can watch The Big Short is a movie that is really good that covers this kind of stuff, and also Too Big to Fail was another one. Too Big to Fail was kind of the crisis from the government's perspective, and The Big Short was like 3 or 4 different groups of people that actually kind of saw the housing crisis coming and what it would do to the whole economy. Go ahead. Actually, you know better than I do. You would. Go ahead.
I mean, I was a mortgage lender, so I came out of college right into the teeth of that, and it was a nightmare. And fortunately, we've gotten past that. But there was actually a bailout with Silicon and the other bank that I'm blanking on right now, Signature, in January of this year, and they created a very similar lending vehicle. People don't even know about this, but because of what I just described, where the Fed funds rate was escalated and they had all of these short-term debt instruments that were ultimately upside down, they created a short-term lending vehicle that was only on offer to banks that had it was never given explicitly, but based off of my analysis, it was any bank that had over $200 billion in cash on hand or deposits or money under management. And so basically what that means is that if you are banking with an institution that's mid-size or massive, then your deposits north of $250,000 are insured. If you are banking and depositing with a bank that has less than $200 billion, so that's your mom and pop bank. Those are the banks that we would probably us people would like to do business with. Now our deposits aren't insured with them. So what does that mean? It drives all of us in this room to make the calculation that it's actually more prudent for me to bank with this scumbag Jamie Dimon than it is to bank with this mom and pop down the street. That is a terrible mismanagement of the economy, and it is not accidental. It is ultimately the reason that Mercola got debanked, the reason that the entire social credit score system is coming. They want us in the biggest banks because the biggest banks are willing to debank us if we don't go along with things.
That's right. It's easier to control if you've only got 5 banks as opposed to 3,000 banks. What would you rather do as a dumb government regulator who wants to tell everyone to do?
So, Clint, well, then what would you say is the best option for people to stay away to continue to move away from the bigger banks and do your best to stay in credit, like credit unions and stuff like that?
I mean, the issue is if you're a mid-sized business that has more than $250,000 that you'd like to put in a bank, I can't in good conscience tell you to put that into a smaller bank, because if we end up in a crisis period, there's a very good chance that you will have your assets frozen. You won't be able to receive them. Now, you can just diversify, you can put that into other accounts, but the tragedy is that you have all of these startup companies that are more conservative leaning that are trying to compete with these Goliaths, and they now have to do business with their enemies, which is the Bank of America, the JP Morgan Chase. It's just not a good footing for our ability to fight back. And I don't think it's an accident.
I want to talk about this story from CNN. DC grand jury that handed up 2020 election indictment against Trump meets again. Now, there's a lot of speculation that they're going to be meeting again because more indictments are going to be handed down against Donald Trump. But there's also speculation they're now going to go after Giuliani and what they refer to as unindicted co-conspirators in Donald Trump's, what do they call it? Criminal fraud against the United States. So it looks like there's a likelihood. I think it makes more sense they're going to go after those quote unquote co-conspirators. What they actually mean is Trump's lawyers. Mm-hmm. They're going to go after the people who gave Trump legal counsel. And this is indicative of the expansion of the weaponization of government. Despite the fact that the Republicans are supposedly probing the weaponization of the DOJ, they're just ramping all of this up. But Tom, I'm wondering what you think about this. What are they doing?
Well, they're escalating. There's been no check. There's been no consequence for this abuse for the Justice Department or the FBI or everyone else involved here. You have Democrats in Georgia about to indict Trump, it looks like. You have the Democrats in New York indict Trump. And what they're trying to do is freeze the Republican Party in the run-up to the election by saying not only is the candidate and the former president, but people around him, the consultant class, your campaign lawyers, activists involved in advising you as to how to handle election disputes, they're subject to being thrown in jail if this is the case, that they end up getting indicted. And I think that's probably going to be true. You know, I testified to the grand jury back in February. They sent the FBI knocking at our door, my home, in November. And, you know, what did Judicial Watch do? Well, we were out there publicly talking about how the Mar-a-Lago case was a sham since they changed their position on presidential records from the Clinton-Sockdorf case that we had been involved in and changed it completely to go after Trump. Came up with new rules. And so complete retaliation. And then they spent 3 hours questioning me about emails and such about presidential electors. And I told them, I said, well, I don't understand what's going on here. Democrats challenged and had alternative slates of electors in 1960. So I guess it's different for Republicans.
And Nixon chose to ignore the certified electors. Instead, he chose the Democrat alternate slate to be counted, and they were counted.
Yeah. So, and on top of that, I told the grand jury, and I had 3 prosecutors questioning me. So it was a triple team on me. And they were, I told them that I was concerned in the summer of 2020, because I read about it in the New York Times, that Democrats were planning succession, threats of secession and civil war if the Electoral College went towards Trump. And I said, well, of course, obviously that isn't going to be investigated by this Justice Department. And what I saw from this grand jury experience that I had was I was in a political argument with these prosecutors about First Amendment protected activity. And I was just sitting there thinking, why am I being questioned about all this? Is a political debate.
Why did they question you? Why did they call you in?
I was harassment and retaliation. Judicial Watch is the number one litigator against the Justice Department. We criticized the Justice Department. We sued for records about their abuse of Trump. They know who we are. They know who I am. And we were the top voice in calling them out. And it drove them crazy. And of course, the big accusation was, well, Trump was listening to Tom Fitton. It's just all sorts of, imagine if the head of the ACLU was called in because of the work he was doing at the ACLU. That's what they did to Judicial Watch. And of course, we don't get the protection and media support that the ACLU gets. But frankly, our work is more consequential. That's why the Justice Department was harassing and abusing us. So what I saw happen at that grand jury was abuse. And I'll tell you one quick story. At one point, the prosecutor said to me, so are you going to talk about this to anyone, what happened here? I said, I don't know. I said, I have to talk to our lawyers, but that's privilege. Are you going to talk about this to anyone? I said, I don't know. It's publicly out there. Are you going to talk about this to anyone? I said, I don't know. And he said, well, oh, by the way, I thought you're allowed to talk about it. And I said, frankly, given your questions, it was pretty intimidating and chilling. So this guy was trying to get me to swear under oath to something I didn't have to do, which was to keep quiet on this abuse of power that I was facing. So I saw this guy was trying to corner me into swearing under oath that I wasn't going to talk. So that was, in my view, outrageous prosecutorial abuse. I'm still ticked about it, and I hope the courts take care of it in the end. I have no surprise that Trump was indicted after what I saw there. And, the grand jury's sitting there. I don't know.
The cultural divide in this country is unsalvageable as far as I'm concerned. The judge in D.C., right now they're trying to stop Trump from being able to speak during a political campaign while they use the case against him to campaign.
The only way...
You look at this judge in Minnesota who's sentencing these cops to prison. These leftist judges don't care about what justice means. They don't care about fairness. They care about power. They're not judges. They're effectively occupying forces placed in these roles for the purpose of destroying anyone who opposes them.
I mean, if the judges were honest, I don't know if honest is the right word. If I were a judge, I'd say, you know what? I'm not playing your game. You're trying to make me interfere in elections. I'm not going to do it. Your case is paused. You come back to me in November or December or January of next year, then we'll talk about what we're going to do. But in the meantime, we're not going to use my courtroom to litigate the campaign. And I'm not going to start telling President Trump that he can't defend himself, as Jack Smith made a political statement last week talking about how Trump was responsible for the attempted overthrow of the government and all the violence on Capitol Hill for which he wasn't even charged. Jack Smith should be the one on the dock.
Bingo.
If the judges were acting appropriately.
Because he said it was true. He didn't say allegedly. He just said he did the crime without the prosecutorial due diligence.
Well, I mean, I think that's a charitable way of putting it. But he came out and suggested that Trump was behind violence and he was promoting the indictment. And, as folks who are smarter about this have explained, a prosecutor can't come out and say, read the indictment. That's the truth. Well, that's not what a prosecutor does. A prosecutor is supposed to say, read the indictment and all the evidence behind it, both inculpatory, the stuff that makes the guy look bad, and exculpatory. And so to say anything else is infecting the jury pool. So there's one man who infected the jury pool, in my view, that hasn't been held accountable, and that's Jack Smith. And of course, don't even get started in all the leaks that have been, I think, fairly attributed to the Justice Department of grand jury material.
The problem is, I think, conservatives and even libertarians to a great degree, post-liberals, whatever this faction is, keep thinking we're playing a game of Monopoly and we got to roll the dice to see if we can get ahead. Meanwhile, they're just pulling bills out of the bank and doing whatever they want.
Yeah, it's like a game of Monopoly where the goal of the game is to be the most popular person in the room. Doesn't matter if you win the board game. Well, you can stand up and flip the table and sing a song, and if everyone looks at you and starts clapping, you win.
But I completely disagree. That's not even it.
That's what this culture. You said the culture bifurcation you were talking about earlier. I agree.
Yes.
There's no way to get one of those pieces to win. You need to create something new that is so dynamically different.
What I'm saying is, imagine playing a board game where you keep playing by the rules and your opponent is cheating right in front of you, telling you they're going to cheat. They keep doing it, and you just keep playing.
Yeah, sounds like those aren't really the rules.
Well, and in the case of the Republicans on the Hill, they're funding it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not a thing the Justice Department's doing that I'm complaining about that isn't getting funding plus by the Republican House leadership. And so they have a decision over the next few months whether they're going to defund Jack Smith.
They're not.
Defund the censorship.
They won't.
But don't let anyone tell you they can't do anything about what is going on with the attack on Trump. So Trump is going to get jailed, I think, potentially. There's a good chance that happens. Americans are being censored. All this other abuse is taking place with the full funding and by Republicans. And they are saying, well, maybe legislation next year. But right now we're being hurt, and they could shut it down tomorrow. But they're on vacation. They're in the middle of a 7-week vacation.
That is unconscionable for the American government to vacate for 7 weeks at a time when you have the internet. You guys get back to work. What in the hell? Clint, you're about to say something awesome.
No, I was just gonna say, I don't actually get that upset with Jack Smith. Jack Smith is a hitman for the regime. That dude's doing his job. What I'm upset with are the conservatives that have had an entire session in which they could have defanged and defunded so much of this nonsense, and they opted not to. Where are they?
They don't even want to impeach Biden. There's not enough evidence.
Yep.
I mean, it's like MSNBC's running the Republican House caucus in terms of being their fearfulness and proceeding with the impeachment inquiry against Biden.
What would be the process if the Republicans were to defund this process? Like, what would that look like? Who would say what? How would it move forward?
I mean, you would say the Justice Department can't spend any money prosecuting any presidential candidate. You could name the person. Prior to whatever date. There are scribes on the Hill that write the language out to prevent the funding of Jack Smith. They can actually defund people by name. So anyone who's been listed in terms of censoring Americans, they can be defunded. And believe me, I've been raising this since Republicans came into power.
And Congress can do this.
Go ahead.
Congress can do this without the Senate. Without the president, they can just
control the purse
on their own, correct?
The House has to be willing to go to the mat on this. And by going to the mat is the Republicans the Senate isn't going to want to buy into this.
Yeah.
But they need the support of the House in order to keep the government funded. And so there's going to be a fight and probably the fall over whether to continue funding of the government because they won't get all the appropriations bills out, and there'll be one gargantuan bill that has to be voted on in order to keep the government operating for either a month or whatever period they agree. And only with the acquiescence of the House would that happen. And so in order to get that acquiescence, they could say, this is what we want. And if they're not willing to say that, that just tells you where they stand on this crisis we're facing. This isn't a political debate. When you're trying to jail a former president and the current candidate, you're kind of, you're leaving the Constitution behind, practically speaking. And the test here is, it wasn't like Trump did something. It's like, well, he robbed a bank. We don't know what the law is there. Here, they have these novel applications of the law, not only in New York, but in both cases against him in the federal government, certainly down in Georgia. And that tells you that they targeted him, and they tried to figure out how to jail him, because they had picked him as a target.
The documents shit was the worst, dude, because Biden had documents too. Like, let it alone.
Yeah,
Hillary Clinton had documents.
What the fuck?
Well, and then
Bill
also
had him in a sock drawer.
Russian collusion, and then I think it was actually today or yesterday that you have the FBI agent that's now getting prosecuted for Russian collusion, and he was the one that lied to get the investigation started on Trump in the first place. It's
Unreal.
Like everything they do. James Lindsay, iron law vote projection. Man.
Yeah, did you see?
Incredible.
There was a tweet from was it the Secretary of State? No, it was. I was just like, is this satire? They were like, we condemn the Russian behavior of silencing the opponent political candidate.
Right. Was that Blinken who said
I
that?
think it was. And I was like, is this satire? Because this is what they're doing to Donald Trump right now. Is the exact same thing.
What an embarrassment. I mean,
gotta
because,
find that.
Putin and Xi look at us and they must say, who are they kidding? America's different. And they pretend they're different. Putin recognizes what's going on with Trump. Xi recognizes what's going on with Trump.
Yeah.
But the idiot class that runs D.C., they pretend there's a serious crime that's being charged here. Everyone else sees, well, the guy's he's arrested his political opponent. What else do you need?
Well, and this is what Russia gets, or Putin gets dragged through the mud for, is exactly what's transpiring in America right now, which is going after your political opponents and jailing people for speech and reporting and all these other things. It's like everything we blame Russia for, we're guilty of, if not worse. It's incredible.
And Biden can shut it down. He's the president of the United States. And if he was honest and ethical, he said, you know what, guys, I don't care what crimes you've come up with. I'm not arresting my opponent. We're not prosecuting him. No.
Yeah.
And he's constitutionally enabled to do that. But instead, we found out on the documents case, the Biden White House intervened at key times to keep the case going against Trump and harassing him. So, but when it comes to this arrest of Trump now twice by his administration, Biden is ultimately responsible.
Well, and just a quick reminder, the second impeachment of Trump when he was the president was about the phone call to Ukraine where he was trying to dig up this dirt, which we now have pretty damn good evidence was all true.
Yeah. Trump
Charisma, Hunter.
Trump
so
was
it was
asking,
Blinken. I got the tweet here. He says, the U.S. strongly condemns Russia's conviction of opposition leader Alexei Navalny
Yeah, incredible.
on politically motivated charges. The Kremlin cannot silence the truth. Navalny should be released.
I was going to retweet that and be like, is this satire? But I'm like, I don't want to be on their list. I'm already in that mindset where it's like, this is the enemy government.
Oh,
I do not
Ian,
like
you're
this.
You're on their list,
You're on
brother.
the list.
Like,
you're
I
already on the list.
don't think it obviously, I thought it was satire. I was like, I knew it wasn't. I knew it was really political bullshit, but it was like, this is so ridiculous. This is what they're doing. I want to read that again. I gotta see. This is from his political account. It's not his personal account.
I condemn the political charges against President Trump, and Biden should remove them as soon as possible.
Yeah, I agree. He has every like, it would do everything good for him if he did that. Because
and I think Republicans are failing here. I know there's a contested primary. I understand that, don't get in the way of a politician and his quest for higher office. But to me, the principal position for any candidate would be, I want to be president, but I don't want the President Trump to be abused, and I stand against this.
Well, yeah. Do you want to rule over the ashes of America? Like, is that a win?
And unfortunately, not too many candidates have said that.
I fixed this tweet for you guys.
oh, nice.
I fixed it. So now it reads, the United States strongly condemns Biden's charges against opposition leader Donald Trump on politically motivated charges. The White House cannot silence the truth. Trump's charges should be dropped. Now, this is fake, by the way. What I did was I just right-clicked it and hit inspect and then went into and just changed it.
Incredible.
That's what I tweeted that out.
Condemns the conviction of opposition leader on politically motivated charges. He fucking Secretary of State tweeted that out. That's Blinken. Just,
it's the First I have to tell everyone, it's the First Amendment, obviously free speech, free association, but the big aspect of the First Amendment that's being attacked here is you have a right to petition your government, Ian, and you should be able to criticize a government leader and ask the vice president, hey, what can you do to stop this election malfeasance? And it's not a crime to do it, and that's what they're telling us now. It's a crime if you ask the government the wrong question or make the wrong request.
no, we're supposed to. That's the purpose of this country.
That's exactly right.
But-
the ethos of this nation is you alter the government.
But consider that you were concerned about quote tweeting Anthony Blinken. Like,
Yeah, it's like I don't want to get involved.
no, but I get it. That's my point, though. Is like you're right to be concerned because
should
we
be.
already know that they're monitoring our meetings.
Look, I was reading my tweets to the grand jury quite happily because I thought they were great tweets, but it was outrageous that I was being harassed before a federal grand jury about my tweets about what the Justice Department was doing.
I want to point something out. I think my brother pointed this out to me. Anthony Blinken. All right, what's his first initial?
A.
And what's his last
was
name?
Chris.
Blinken.
Now say that.
A. Blinken. Hey.
Abe Lincoln. It's not an accident.
Abe Blinken tweeted.
Well, interesting. Abe Lincoln is going to lead us into a second civil war. Fascinating.
That's funny. But this is the perfect.
Well, hold on. We got news. From the New York Post. McCarthy demands Biden give us his bank statements as impeachment probe looms. Right. Okay, so we can get a little worked up, I guess, and be like, oh, look, he's going after Biden's bank statements. But I just want to point out.
Why is he only asking now for them?
Well, it's because he's dropping grains of sand every week where it's like, oh, if Joe Biden, if we find out that he's a little bit more corrupt than we already know he is, we might actually ask each other whether or not we should ask the government for the authority to ask for bank statements to maybe question an impeachment.
The old phrase is boob bait for the bubbas. That's what that is.
Yeah.
What is that?
McCarthy's not going to do anything.
You kind of, as Tim was pointing out, you give just a little bit to keep your base excited and motivated, but not do enough. And I largely agree with Democrat critiques of Republican concerns about corruption. That it's a lot of it is political. They kind of want to use it to get some votes now and again, keep the other side on their heels. But when it comes to like accountability, they're fearful of it and they don't want to do it. So here, this is the danger here is for McCarthy and Republicans is that they just keep stringing this along. Everyone's going to see this as political. Fish or cut bait, guys. We don't need another hearing. We don't need another report. We don't need another email release. Judicial Watch can write reports. We release emails. What does Congress do? They can defund. They can make criminal referrals. They can impeach. McCarthy had any guts. What he'd do right now is he'd say all these committees investigating, the House Oversight Committee, the Weaponization Committee, Judiciary Committee, the Homeland Security Committee, you're all part of the impeachment inquiry. Okay. And now we're all gearing towards impeachment. We're going to figure out who to impeach. from lower level officials, like Mayorkas, all the way up to the president of the United States. Just do it.
That sounds glorious.
You think that
They're not going to do any of that.
I know, but it still sounds glorious.
Well, they might if someone, I tell you, my understanding is House members are getting a lot of pushback on their failure to do what folks like Tom Fitton are suggesting. And so it's not like we're speaking into the wind here. There are many, many Republicans and conservatives in the base of the Republican Party, and more than a few honest Democrats want something done about Biden corruption. And they're tired of this, what we're seeing here. Give us engaging in performance fighting isn't going to satisfy. We've been through this before, time and time again.
Is it donor driven? Is that why they don't want to go to the mat on this? That they would lose. There must be corporate interests that make them not want to go this route. Because I don't understand it otherwise. Because their base would be jumping for joy. They would be reelected in a landslide.
So they're probably afraid of the establishment.
They want to wait till an election.
Well, I don't want to say that there's no political downside to doing this, and I would admit there might be.
Yeah.
But do they have a choice? What? Can you not impeach Biden at this point? I don't see how you not do it.
Maybe they're looking for golden evidence before they push forward. Because if they want his bank statements, they're looking for connections to Burisma and Hunter, and then maybe that'll be the hammer.
They didn't ask for the bank statements. They spent the last 6 months, and I think there was some smart activity there in that regard. Let's get to a fight with Hunter and Joe for his bank statements. We can get all these other bank statements pretty easily. And that's what they did. And so it's now August. They're all on vacation, and they're talking about, well, maybe we'll start asking for the Biden, Hunter Biden, or I don't know, I'm assuming Joe Biden's bank statements. I don't know what Joe Biden's bank statements are going to show. My guess is, who's paying his contractor fees up in Delaware? No, he didn't. He doesn't pay any bills.
No, that's
Hunter was paying all the bills. They got to do more than bank statements.
Hunter is the bag man. I want everyone to understand that the money was being funneled through these corrupt business cutouts into Hunter's bank accounts, but then Hunter was responsible for taking care of all of the expenditures for the entire Biden family. That's the whole way they circumvented this, folks. It's pretty obvious at this point if you've paid any attention at all. That's what they did. Biden doesn't ever touch the money. That's how he gets away with it.
There's a crisis for the political system here in Washington, D.C., because they've known Biden's been corrupt since he's a senator. He's been in Washington 50 years. This is not a surprise to folks who serve with him and people around him. And the problem the political system has is now half the country believe him to be corrupt too. So now they don't know what to do about it. Hence McCarthy's confusion about whether to support or not support an impeachment inquiry.
And if they ripped it open and he was super corrupt and then got impeached and had to step down, we'd have Kamala Harris as president. And are we even better off? Is that, you think that's going through people's heads?
Yeah. If that's what justice results in, that's the reality of it. And just think about it, an impeachment inquiry. They're not, they're still presuming to say that, well, we don't know if we're going to impeach him or not. Come on, guys.
Because justice, it's when do you put the brakes on justice? You could rip it open on Kamala Harris's bank records next. You could go into Willie Brown next. You could go into her old text message. How deep do you want to go to take out every new leader that steps in because of some dumb corruption scandal?
You actually, but it's not done though. I want to be very clear. This is not dumb. If you are actually there's a really good chance that Russia doesn't invade if it's not for Biden's relationship with Burisma and the leadership, not to mention the State Department coup, not to mention Victoria Nuland. There's a whole bunch of back history here that, yes, there's minor, seemingly millions of dollars worth of corruption in terms of what they profited. But what does it mean in terms of the outcome for geopolitical dynamics? We could end up in World War III because we were led by a corrupt president during this period.
Yeah, because you're telling Russia and China, if you compromise our president, we're going to remove him from office or move to remove him. Burisma was a Russia-leading government entity. What I loved about that 1023, that FBI form that described the head of Burisma's bribe scheme for the Bidens. So the FBI source goes and says, we had the meeting and it was all in Russian. So Burisma was, so between Russia giving them money through the oligarch's wife, that was further confirmed last week.
Who is that? What's the wife's name?
Maria, what's her face?
It was the mayor of Moscow's ex-wife, I believe.
Yeah. So it was three, and Devon Archer essentially confirmed they sent millions of dollars to their companies, and all of which they shared. And then Burisma, you have FBI
Yelena.
evidence. He gave $10 million. They gave $10 million to the Bidens. And so if you're Putin, to your point, Clint, you're thinking, well, I'm not going to invade Ukraine because Biden's on the tank, and I know he is because we compromised him. But certainly that would be a factor, don't you think? That the country's not stable. Well, D.C., Biden can be he's compromised. He can be talked to. He knows we know about him. Well, we had documents where during the Obama administration, the Ukrainian ambassador was getting an email from her person just before Biden went to Ukraine in January of 2021, just before Trump came in. And the Russians started trolling him, literally trolling him in the newspapers.
Well, keep in mind, too,
because of Burisma. And Obama's ambassador said, was told, well, this is the Burisma's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yep.
So they knew that the Biden issue was compromising our national security vis-a-vis Russia.
Well, and keep in mind, too, Hunter Biden was the lead envoy for the U.S. to Ukraine under Barack Obama's administration in 2014. When that coup happens, that's largely a State Department, Victoria Nuland-led fiasco. So, this is a long-running dynamic, and people get caught up on, just this one 12-month or 18-month period of history. It's very important that you understand the entire encompassing 20-year period, or better yet, go all the way back to 91 in the USSR, and when the wall fell, and then
go back to Afghanistan, where the CIA is funding the Mujahideen to ruin the Russians from within.
Quick shout out to my guy Scott Horton. He's got a new book called Provoke that's coming out in sometime. It's amazing. It's an amazing book. That's the whole reason I know about all this history. He's been incredible on
Mike Flynn was indicted by the Justice Department, General Flynn, for not registering as a foreign agent because he worked for a Turkish nonprofit, not the Turkish government, a Turkish nonprofit closely linked to the government. Now, there's even more significant and powerful evidence that Joe Biden is an unregistered foreign agent vis-a-vis the Chinese and the Russians.
Yep.
If it's good enough,
Trump should have done more.
It's like when you look at it, it seems so overwhelming and what in the hell these pieces. But when you look at it in the future, when you look back on it, it will make perfect sense.
Well, here's the problem too. The reason, and I asked him earlier, why are they not pursuing the defunding of all this? Why are they not pursuing this investigation as they should? My opinion is that both sides of the aisle are comparably dirty when it comes to Ukraine in particular. They were. I mean, you have Lindsey
Have you seen
Graham.
Chris Christie?
Yeah, well, Chris Christie. But
He said his audience supports his efforts on his views on Ukraine and thinks we're not doing enough.
Yeah, it's nonsense. I don't know anybody on the GOP side that actually feels that way. But you have Lindsey Graham, you have John McCain that are over in Ukraine in 2018, going next year is the year of offense. I mean, this is a long-running thing, man, and it's both sides of the aisle that were they were cha-chinging. You got Mitt Romney, you got Nancy Pelosi. They're all making money off this crap.
So question for you guys, if the United States pivots and is we're going to settle this war, peacetime, we're going to sell Eastern Donbass to the Russians for $350 trillion or whatever the hell. It's going to go to the bank. It's going to pay for reconstruction. The Russians will pay for it. The Russians say yes, if that happens.
Yes.
Will they stop there? Will they go for Turkey? Will they try and seize Istanbul so that they have a trade route into the Mediterranean, or are we good to go? Did we just appease Hitler for the second time, or is this actually peace?
I think it's over at that point. I honestly do. That's my honest opinion.
Yeah, I think if the war settles with the Russians keeping a little bit of Ukraine and Crimea, that will probably, there'll be a tense peace for a decade. And frankly, it depends on the Western leadership. I mean, the Russians are, they will push where they think they can push. And if they don't think they can get anywhere, they won't.
Right.
With everything going on in terms of the weaponization of government, people being arrested, crime, people just running rampant in these cities. At what point, when we look back at history, there are periods where people fled their country because of the turmoil. At what point do you guys think we could reach? Are we already at the point where a sane and sober person says it is not safe to be in this country, or are we still a few years away from potentially reaching that point like Kristallnacht or something?
A lot of wealthy people have already started to split, if I understand correctly.
From big cities.
Yeah.
Well, from the U.S.
No, I was going to say, and the billionaires. So it's the upper class are leaving places like New York. The billionaires are building bunkers. But I'm thinking about, Kristallnacht, right? World War II era Germany,
the
or
night of
Nazi
broken
Germany.
glass.
Right. They went around and smashed up all these Jewish businesses. And everyone's on the left, Godwin's law. Everyone's always trying to compare everything to Nazi Germany. But you can look at a bunch of other historical examples of mass unrest pre-breakout of revolution or civil war. In the instance of Weimar Germany, into Nazi Germany, it wasn't necessarily a civil war. It was just this cultural revolution that took place over the period of several years. And with other countries, it was overt revolution. So when it comes to Nazi Germany, you had people fleeing well before the Nazis rose to power because these people were like, we could see it happening. In other countries, you had outright civil war and revolution break out with extreme violence in the streets, and people were fleeing. Now, I understand in Weimar Germany, there was violence in the streets, there were street battles, but I'm wondering what you think about the United States. Is it possible that ever comes a time where people say it's not safe to be here anymore?
I think it depends on whether the institutions, it's going to be a race, right? The left is trying to destroy the institutions of our republic, right? And either take them over completely and change them, their basic character to make them anti-constitutional or post-constitutional. And the question is, will the American voter beat them to it and get them out of power so that sane people come back in and restore and reform those institutions?
And is that possible?
And you know what? I think it's possible. My view is, imagine if just there was a different House Speaker in the beginning of the Trump administration other than Ryan.
All right.
Or someone who was, more House Freedom Caucusy.
Right.
Or someone, a different president or a different Republican leader. To me, what's frustrating and both hopeful at the same time is it doesn't take a lot to get this reform through. But it's so frustrating because it's still not getting done, even though it doesn't take a lot to get this reform through.
Well, let me say definitively yes. There is a point at which that could be the case. For me, the two demarcation points would be either abolition of the Second Amendment broadly. That would be like, gotta go. You gotta leave.
Where would you go?
Somewhere where I could not have to deal with the federal government. But I mean, they are the empire, so it's kind of hard to go anywhere and be any better off, ultimately. But I would still probably leave. And then the second one would be packing the Supreme Court. If they opt for that, that's really like the last line of defense. Thank God. That's the best thing about Trump's presidency. I've said it 1,000 times. The Supreme Court justices he put up there, like, if it weren't for them, I don't think that the vaccine mandate from Biden gets overturned. Like, there's a bunch of things that don't get overturned if it's not for Trump's presidency.
But let's dig into that. You're saying that not even a direct threat to you, if the institution is attacked and gun rights are gone and the Supreme Court is packed, that's enough for you to be like, we got to get out of here.
I think so.
What do you guys think?
I don't think there's anywhere to go. I think
El Salvador.
I don't think so.
The left is running things down south.
I think if the U.S. were to be in a situation where like the U.S. falls or whatever, like in a woods is where you're going. Like it's head out to the Rockies, get into the mountains, and live like the Wolverines.
I know a lot of Bitcoin people. My buddy Jethro just moved to El Salvador, though. I know there's a very big tendency to believe that America is the freest place on earth, and I think historically that's true. I'm not so sure it is right now. I'm not so sure.
They've really fumbled this technocratic evolution thing.
Yeah,
like it's gone too far. But we got to remember, the concept of uniting states is where it's at. It doesn't have to be here on this continent. It's just a concept. It's an idea of delocalized authority. That can remain, even if some states want to bail or fail. But I think that the states uniting is the way of the future. We'll have probably an Earth of states united at some point. And then Mars.
That sounds like a one world government.
Even the satellite station where people live will become its own state.
Elon.
Well, it's just an extrapolation of liberal democracy or democratic republic, but it'll be a global tyranny instead of a local tyranny.
No, thank you.
That's exactly what we're trying to avoid.
Well, they want top-down authority. They want a centrally controlled globe. I want decentralized controlled globe.
I mean, this is the whole thing about the AI stuff.
That's what nations provide. Nations that have sovereign power over themselves provide decentralized authority. You can work together as nations, but you're not under one global authority.
The nation is a step of the delocalization. So you have cities, then you have states, then you have let's just go
provinces.
Nations, then you have globes, planets, and then you'll have solar systems, and then you'll have galaxies.
Oh, okay.
But we got to rule ourselves from the local level.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And I think, I appreciate your point earlier, Tim, about, people want to be able to eat. but public safety is a pretty big deal.
Security is a factor.
And I think at the local level, these public safety issues eventually, even the mayor of D.C. is becoming a law and order mayor.
Yeah.
Really? Immigration mayors in New York and Chicago.
The problem is that a lot of the big cities have, they've put the Democrats have put their political base. They don't care. They think their votes can be taken for granted, and they don't respond to their concerns about public safety. But here in D.C., you get Democrat politicians who are concerned about their personal safety. Things change in a minute. And so I think the public safety issue could be a significant cutting-edge issue to get back control of the government from the radical extremists that are trying to destroy our institutions.
Sean, I forget what his last name
Actual
is.
Justice Warrior?
Yeah, Actual Justice Warrior.
Dude.
He makes this point that crime drives poverty, but poverty doesn't drive crime, which I think is pretty astute. Like, if you have an area that has a lot of crime, then you're not going to have investment. You don't have anybody that wants to go in. And as much as people on the left hate gentrification does help the economies of areas and stuff. So if you've got, like, the first thing you have to do is stop the crime. You have to get people to stop breaking the law. And as long as you've got people, as long as your DAs aren't putting people in jail for looting, then you're not going to have any kind of investment, and you're going to have companies fleeing, like what's going on in multiple major cities.
It's even worse than that, Phil. It's not just not putting violent criminals away. It's putting away good Samaritans.
Yes.
It's like, it's awful. It's the exact inverse of what you should be doing.
Absolutely. Point
And
taken.
we're all supposed to forget about the poor guy up in New York who,
wrestled
rescued all those folks on the subway.
that homeless.
Well, now you got the guys
facing-
in California who, the 7-Eleven workers,
The Sikhs or
the
whatever.
guy threatens to kill them, so they
beat him up.
They beat him up. Now they're being investigated for assault.
Oh my!
The dude
well,
pulled
they
out
did,
some kind of weapon,
but they beat on him for a while.
and he had a weapon on him.
Did he?
So he pulled out some kind of weapon and threatened them.
If he brandished a weapon, that's
Yep.
not assault. You got to
Then
beat him into submission at that point,
And then
or at least stop the
and
threat.
all they had was a stick. If they stopped, does he get up and just start stabbing them or
Exactly.
shooting them? Who knows? Apparently, he threatened to shoot these guys. So what can they do other than try to incapacitate them? Otherwise, they'll get shot.
Yeah, and if they had a gun, shooting them would have probably been legally easier.
Not in California.
Yeah, well,
They'd be in prison already.
For the record, Actual Justice Warrior is Sean Fitzgerald.
Fitzgerald, that's it. Yes,
Love you, Sean.
He's great.
Yeah, he's really
he's
smart
great.
and
I
funny
love his
dude. That
videos.
guy's awesome. I'm trying to answer your question, Tim. If there's a point, I mean, obviously, if the Bill of Rights starts to become overturned,
I think this idea of like institutional limits, I'm not as concerned. I mean, obviously, if the Second Amendment goes away, it's very, very bad. But that precipitates the point of no that is before. I guess what I mean to say is when we're looking at them right now arresting their political opponents.
Yeah.
That's the test. I mean, I think the Trump thing is the big test these days.
If they go after,
it's really disturbing.
So Trump is the point where it's like, okay, it's getting dark. This is their political rival. Now, if they do indict Giuliani, I gotta say, I think that's the point where historically many people said they fled the country, because going after an attorney who was advising someone shows that you have a regime, you no longer have a government, that they will come for anyone who expresses discontent.
I already feel that way.
And you have the state, these poor...
Well, I'm talking about speech. Like
right.
Giuliani talking to Trump. If they do indict him, then you're next. Media personalities, commentators, people on Twitter, they'll come after. They already had you, Tom, in front of a grand jury.
Knocking at my door, at my home. They sent the FBI to the home of the head of the country's largest government watchdog organization.
I got to be honest. That's
intimidation.
When you read history,
it's retaliation.
I think we are past the point.
I do too.
Where you already have families being like, well, actually, I heard something interesting. People who migrated here, saying they're going back to their home countries and things like that. I met a guy from El Salvador, and he said he was returning back home because it's safer there than here now.
I don't know if
I really think what you're describing is already going on. It's just that the United States being organized the way that it is, with multiple states in one federal jurisdiction. That's why you see people leaving California and people that are leaving. There are people, I'm sure, leaving red states, although I'm sure there's far fewer
stupid people.
But there are people that are we are organizing and segregating ourselves by our political opinions more more, as every day goes on, there are more and more people that do that.
That's why they want to ban cars.
Well,
and then have us all live in 15-minute cities
yeah.
/ gulags.
You ain't lying.
When we look back at history, we ask ourselves, like, how could it get so bad? How did it get so bad in Germany? How did it go from one point to the other? And the issue is that these things happen slowly, one step at a time, over long periods of time. The American Revolution was a 20-year period. It's not like the Crown said a bunch of nasty things and then we were like, you know what, we're going to declare independence. And a lot of people, we talked about this. When did we actually gain our independence? It wasn't until years after 1776. What was it, like 1781 or something like that, or 83?
1789 is when the Constitution was ratified.
83, I think, was the Treaty of Paris.
Okay.
So
there's a reason that the republics haven't been around for a long time.
Yeah,
and we're running into it. I'm less concerned about turning into Germany, Tim, than turning into Canada.
Well, my point is this.
Fortunately, we don't have a king.
If they criminally charge Giuliani, Sidney Powell, or anyone else,
John Eastman.
Yeah, John Eastman. And Jeffrey Clark, is that his name as well?
Jeffrey Clark, a Justice Department attorney who was giving advice and counsel to the President of the United States.
And they're calling them co-conspirators,
Yep.
and the grand jury is convening. If any of these individuals are indicted, you are past the point of no return. This is where the federal government is not going after its political opponents is bad enough. But going after counsel is when the government is expressly stating anyone who speaks against us or tries in any way to form a legal argument against us, which is free and fair, you will be locked up.
Yeah.
There's the First Amendment, there's Sixth Amendment, which is the right to counsel. I go back, I think, to that Duke prosecutor who went after those players fraudulently on rape. And he was eventually disbarred. I don't know if he was criminally prosecuted or not. But, I mean, if justice prevails here, Alvin Bragg gets disbarred, Jack Smith gets disbarred and subject to investigation over this abuse of power. And what they're literally accusing Trump of doing, which is, misusing his powers as a government official in an illegal way to suppress the civil rights of American citizens. It's literally what Jack Smith did to me.
Exactly. It's what they always do.
Arrest thyself, Jack Smith.
They don't care. They don't care that you're saying this. They don't care that we feel this way. No. In fact, they're probably laughing, saying, "Hey guys, we're winning."
Economics, man. It goes back to the Federal Reserve formation to me. That co-op by John Rockefeller and his buddies. J.P. Morgan was involved. Paul Warburg was involved. They went to an island, Jekyll Island, over Christmas when Congress wasn't even in session, and they a skeleton crew signed this dumbass bank into law, this proprietary bank. They sold us out in 1913. Now the curtain is pulled back, but this has started 100 years ago.
Yep. And the inflation, and from then it's 99% of the value of the dollar. Gone.
So I want control from these, and like what you were saying earlier, Tom. None of the politicians weren't economic people, so they didn't understand how to do economics. They're like, fine, yes, give it to bankers. Bankers will know how to handle the economy better than I do because I'm a Harvard grad or whatever. But they failed, and the private bank has gone rogue. And they work out of Switzerland through the Bank for International Settlements. I don't know if there's a revolution, it is from the private banks. I don't know how exactly to do that, short of telling everyone pull your money out of the bank
it's Bitcoin.
And give them a date and a time.
A lot of people say,
but
it's
you could crash the banks intentionally. I think of that as economic terrorism personally, and I haven't pointed people down that road. That's one way. But if you're going to remove the system, you need to put something better in place of it.
Yeah, I think the result is going to be just a sad shadow, the United States will be a sad shadow of its former self, where the liberties that our fathers and forefathers, grandfathers, I guess, took for advantage, they thought that, granted. Yeah, and it's not going to be available to us anymore.
But will it be demonized for the future? Because what would happen is,
that's what they're doing. They're tearing down statues of, for the radical left, they always have to be tearing down something. So you're never radical enough. That's why you always have to be deconstructing and raising your consciousness. Yes, it's a perpetual process.
That's the critical consciousness process. But let me take the inversion of this, or the inverse of this, and just say, I think that ultimately there is a tremendous awakening amongst young men, particularly in this country, as to what they've been up against. And I'm far more hopeful that we have seen the worst days, or close to the worst days, like we're nearing the inflection point. So I don't think we're without hope. I really don't.
We're going to go to Super Chats. So if you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button? Smash that like button in memory of Roberto Jr. And head over to TimCast.com, click Join Us, become a member, so that you can watch tonight's uncensored members-only show, which will be at about 10 p.m. It's going to get a little conspiratorial. because a second body, that's right, body was found at the Arizona State Capitol, and we can only speculate as to what's going on right now, and I'll leave it at that, and you want to watch the members-only show.
I thought you were going to say a second body was found in the chicken coop.
No, a second body was found at the Arizona State Capitol, which is a bit more serious, as much as we love Roberto Jr.
Yes.
But now we will read your Super Chats. I'm not your buddy, guy says, how can you coexist with people who at every chance will cheat, lie, manipulate, steal, abuse power, and do everything to undermine you, while also believing your existence is an obstacle to their power? You can't, and therein lies the great cultural problem. I don't know.
You need to get them to look at what you're looking at, and you need to get them to stand behind you and to your right a little bit. But so there is a form of unity and metallic bonding, and that you need to correct their focus onto something else that you want them to focus on. And
all right. Joshua 029 says, rest in peace, crying emoji and chicken head, and then says, rip young king. Thank you for the Super Chats, good sir. Goldilocks Production says, Tim, I have to disagree with something you said about small towns earlier. You said rioting and stuff still happens in small towns. The stuff reported in media is the exception, not the rule. Small towns take care of their own. They certainly do. But when the George Floyd riots happened, there were riots across all of these small towns and people's lives were destroyed. It happened. There have been small towns where the far left has tried showing up and you see videos of these dudes like pushing them out.
Yeah, small town I'm from, there was never any problems like that. I think the ones that do get hit, they get publicized, but for the most part, small town community is where it's at.
Being in a rural exurban community is not going to protect you from the communists.
No, that's where they're going to go first.
Ask the Cambodians how that worked.
All right, Keel, that he says, I'm super chatting to ask if Cast Brew would be putting out a cold brew kit. I'm an original TimCast member and really appreciate the work that the TimCast crew is doing in fighting the culture war. We want to actually do bottled cold brew. It's just expensive to do. You have to order very, very, very large sums. They have a shelf life. I don't know if we could move the volume we need to justify. I think right now, if we wanted to do cold brew, it would be like $4 per can. And then it's like, what do we sell it for? Cost, just so we can have it, plus shipping. It's pretty expensive.
$20 for four of them.
Yeah,
what's the
super
shelf
expensive.
life?
1 year.
1 year.
Yeah, so it's like, what do we do? You have to get the price down. You got to order a lot.
Make the can
thousands.
like bronze.
So you need to make a year. You essentially need to make a year's bet, right?
Yep.
We need
A year's bet of sales, right?
No. We need nobody. We don't want to sell 10-month-old coffee on the verge of expiring. We want to sell coffee that's fresh, ready to go, and which means even if we went for we can probably move all this before it expires. And so some people will buy cans that have like 2 weeks left. Maybe they're fine with it because they're not ordering that much. We get the cost down to $3. We're ordering 100,000. I don't think we move that much cold brew.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough.
I was looking for a good low acidity coffee, and turns out cold brew is low acidity.
Yeah. What you need to do something like this is to get a pre-existing contract with a chain of, say, gas stations or something where they're like, yeah, we'll order 10,000 cans to stock at all of our gas stations every month or whatever, and see how it goes. Maybe you can get it in some supermarkets, but...
Oh, okay. So get the pre-orders in, get the markup already set.
Well, you
so
go to
know
a
what
chain
you're
of
gonna
stores, they have like 15 supermarkets, and they say, we'll order 2,000 cans, every month. And it's like, oh, okay, now we can justify larger purchases. Now we can justify putting it on our website. Now we can justify shipping and the cost and all that. But for the time being, the amount of sales we do, we cannot justify actual cold brew cans. That's why we have, but K-Cups are coming. Where are we at? We got some more Super Chats. Anonymous Smith says, as someone who leans more libertarian and a gamer, I was wondering if you've considered sponsoring a group of gamers that stream on Rumble. Tim could also play Horizon on stream. I might consider playing like Overwatch or something.
What about Baldur's Gate 3?
I don't play that.
Man, I just started it. It's daunting to go down that road because it's 100 hours, of my life, and I don't want to do it alone.
Dude, I'm a level 75 on Diablo.
You beast. What class?
Not wizard. What's the other
Sorcerer?
word? Yeah, sorcerer.
Yeah, me too. What's your specialization?
Ice shards.
Oh, me too. They're nasty, dude.
Let's go. I knew Ian was my Diablo brethren.
Yeah, dude. Freeze invulnerable, baby.
Ian's your doppelganger.
I didn't want to derail because, Tim, I think a streaming show would be badass. Even if it's
Streaming video games?
Yeah, 30 minutes a week.
We've been working on it, but
Yeah, we should hit the gas.
there's a bunch of things we're working
But
on.
don't
that
offer to
get done.
give out PlayStation 5s in the middle of DC or something.
We could do like a
Yeah.
gaming channel where different people play different games on different days and
Well,
times.
I announced we were doing a skate event in DC with free skateboards. A couple hundred people showed up. It was a great time. We all went home. Like it was fun. We skated. And
Imagine that.
maybe we should do it again. Actually, it's warmer out now, and we'll get the crew to go
It would
down
be nice to do it on a warmer day.
Yeah. What are we looking at? And it's starting to cool off a little bit. Let's.
September and October are
What's going on this
beautiful
weekend?
in DC.
The 12th. Do I have anything?
Yeah,
we have anything
the
going on?
weather's been
August, it doesn't
so
get.
good.
August is. I like August.
Maybe
It's
we'll
not too
all be
hot
in
out.
DC at Freedom
You can-
Plaza
you
this
can
weekend.
deal.
Yeah.
Freedom.
Freedom Plaza in DC is a good skate spot. We'll go there and we'll do some flippity flips and whatever. Waffle Sensei says, I will be buying a bag of Roberto's coffee now to pay my respects. I think Roberto Jr. might be the most famous chicken in the world. You made it, pal. Yeah, he had
That's true.
he had a 95 foot tall billboard in Times Square with just his big face on it. And poor guy, he had a heart attack. And when he croaked, I immediately we're googling like what happened, and it's like roosters have heart attacks, like it's a thing.
I'm serious. I think he might have been the most famous chicken on earth. That's
Is
pretty
there a
cool.
more famous chicken? I don't know.
I can't think of any. I don't know of a single other chicken with a name. So
Yeah, there's
I think
like
Roberto
Foghorn
wins by
Leghorn,
default.
but he ain't real.
Roberto is going to take over. You know, so Roberto is at Cocktown.
It's like Jack Dorsey coming back
Which
to
is-
Twitter.
You know, so we're bringing back his dad, and Roberto's what is he, a year and a half older than him? You know,
How long do roasters
about a
live?
decade.
10
So
years?
Roberto Jr. was like the equivalent of a guy in his 30s.
Yeah, super young.
They're really young, really young. You know, he was a nice guy, and we have no explanation for what happened. He's not scared of humans.
I was thinking maybe he
he's
was
been-
lonely because he had been separated because he was spurring
It's
the
only
women.
been a few days.
Yeah.
No, like I guess it happens, but you know, I was thinking like maybe he was scared, but he grew up around people. He's been carried all the time. He has no issues with people. He's not scared of anybody. Roberto's more aggressive.
Maybe the water sound when she kicked it on. I don't
No,
know.
we have
in a-
rain and running water all the time.
Yeah, that's
in
true.
like in
I
a
don't know.
strange environment
we're
with
gonna have to have
water.
He's been
We're
here
gonna have to
before. He
have an
grew up in
inquest.
here.
Yeah, but
He grew up in here.
all the factors of like
I'll conduct
there
an
was-
inquest if you'd
There
like.
was no one downstairs. There was like five of us. He was with Kim. He was carried by Kim. He looked totally chill. No idea.
it's been weighing heavy on his
I
heart.
want everyone to save their documents.
When he started,
Delete no emails. I want to do an investigation.
Oh, forensic. We
when
should go
Roberto
do
Jr. first started crowing, he would collapse. So he's
Oh,
very,
okay.
and we thought,
so he wasn't healthy.
right.
Yeah. Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah. Well, he was one of the first chickens that we hatched. It was one of the first eggs, I think, that his mom was laying.
that. Yeah, we had like 7, and we all thought they were all hens.
The first, right.
That was Big Boy. That was
and
that was
then
Roberto.
And then Roberto turned out to be a guy.
That was Roberto. Yeah.
So then we incubated some of the eggs. His mom died of cancer. So Katerina was Roberto Jr.'s mom and had ovarian or like whatever cancer, chicken cancer, and just one day was dead. And then we got a necropsy, and they said very serious cancer. So you know, not a healthy rooster, unfortunately, but we tried.
Good looking rooster.
Little Luke's doing good.
Yeah, Lukester.
He's been getting with the ladies, you know. Little Luke's going to be a dad.
You want that guy?
But Roberto Jr. does have a bunch of kids.
Dude, we
so
should give Luke his own coffee.
little Luke.
Yeah.
Well, Roberto
Chickens
Jr. is
maybe you're
the
right.
man.
Too many chickens.
Let's grab some more super chats. Kenny Logan says, y'all live right in the Appalachian Trail. Ian, go on a spiritual journey out in the woods. Just a backpack and some religious texts for a few weeks. I've hiked the entire thing. I'll guide you if you want.
Wow,
I'm
that
willing to
sounds
bet that
awesome.
Sir Kenny Loggins did not do the entire thing. Because it actually goes to Scandinavia.
Wow.
It's called the International Appalachian Trail. The range of mountains actually goes through the water and then into Scotland and Scandinavian countries. So I am being a bit pedantic, but the people who are like, we've done the whole thing, they actually do the
There's an
international route.
international light to it. Yeah, that's
Yeah. The ridge or whatever that created the mountains keeps going into Europe. It's crazy.
Dang. My cousin just walked it the U.S. side.
You get to Maine and then you're like, well, I guess I'm done.
How long did it take him?
I don't know. He walked past us, like not literally, but through here, and I wasn't around. I didn't meet up with him, but I don't know how long it took.
You know, I'm just, people are asking about Roberto Jr. I just don't know what could have caused this. Everything had been fairly normal. You know, he'd been taking care of Chicken City.
Yep.
He was investigating the Clintons. And then I'm done.
I don't know.
But
Oh, Roberto Jr.
He was paddling on the pond.
Yeah, he was on a paddleboard out in the water with the Obamas, and
We
All
took
right.
we took a blood sample. It disappeared. I don't know what's going on.
All right, we'll grab some more. Raymond Hurd says, shout out to Livingston, Half-Life on YouTube. You were made from stars to live a life you have never loved. You were made from scars to live a life to rise above. Ian. Okay.
Was that a message for me? I thought it was going to be for the chicken.
I have no
you.
idea.
That was nice. Something about, that sounded cool. I want to read that.
The
again.
Coco Nino says, Tim and Gang, if you're coming to Alaska, you need to come to SE, mountains, water, fish, glaciers, West Virginia refugees only. Happy to help if you need info, especially Ian. He needs to get set straight.
Oh my gosh, I'm trying to read old super chats and hearing new ones, and it's so many chats. You know what I noticed about working out and eating more protein? I feel like I'm dumber, but that might be a good thing.
What?
I feel like things are hazy and foggy, and I'm like trying to pay attention.
I think you're just tired.
Yeah.
Maybe more fatigue.
Yeah. Fatigue.
I was like, am I gonna be the dumb meathead on the show now?
Because when you eat a lot and you're lifting and stuff, your blood rushes to your stomach to help digest. So that could be.
It was especially the first
just,
week. The first week was like fuzzy. I was
Did you
like,
use
whoa.
that blender tumbler thing?
I haven't used it yet. No.
It's amazing.
Oh, nice.
What is it called? Like a Voltrix or
I'll
something?
bring it in next time.
So
to
we got
keep
these
stirring.
protein shakers that has a little plastic blender on the bottom. And so you just mix in your protein drink and then press the button. It blends itself while you're like walking.
And I do like fruit, like blackberries. So when all the seeds fall to the bottom, I can give it a little spin and mix them all in and then take a sip. So I don't get all seed at the end, you know?
Yeah, I know.
All right.
You know what that?
Jazan Heitman says, maybe it's Jason. Tim, you talk about the U.S. Civil War and the French Revolution. Ever read about the Franco-Prussian War? France started with Napoleon III as emperor, then went to the Third Republic, then the French Commune, all in a year. Scary, too. Yeah, a lot of people don't realize there was more than one French Revolution. You had the French Revolution, then there was Emperor Napoleon. So, you know.
There's a
Pretty
movie. Ridley Scott's doing a movie on Napoleon.
Oh, that's gonna be awesome.
He wasn't short. That's a myth.
Really?
Yes.
He had imperial guards, and imperial guards were always chosen to be massive dudes. So in these paintings, you have Napoleon with these really tall guys, and like, look how short he was, when in fact Napoleon was of average height.
It was like British propaganda.
Was he what?
Yeah,
I've read.
5'9" or so, I guess, right?
No, he's 5'5". People were short back then.
Okay.
So he wasn't short in terms of the population.
He's short relative to us now.
Right.
But
So
he
was
had
everybody.
he had imperial guards that were like 6 feet tall.
Right.
Yeah,
so in
giants.
paintings, we have an old barn house at Vredomistan, and the ceilings are 7 feet. You're walking through the doors and like of average height, you're like ducking. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Because people in like, what was it average height in like 1900, like 5'5" for a guy?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's crazy, right?
I think it had to do with like the French feet being smaller than like English feet too. Then there's like some whole situation with that too.
You're saying that human beings were shorter because we had different words for height?
No, I think the measurement was just smaller in English, and so they're like, oh, he's much shorter. When in reality, they're using a different measure.
They were just translating it in a way that was
Yeah.
fun.
I love how
I don't
British
know.
people weigh people by stones.
Yeah.
Oh, they still do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's literally nothing that the British do better than Americans. We can even like measure things better. They're just so backwards.
What about
Ridiculous.
scones?
They do meat pies pretty well. Like
They can
meat
congeal blood
pastries, they
into
do
a
well.
food.
They do.
That's pretty gangster.
Oh, 1 stone is 14 pounds.
Yeah. Let's grab some more. Schweck says, John Adams defended the British soldiers who opened fire at the Boston Massacre.
Did.
The most hated people in Massachusetts, but Adams made sure they had a fair trial. We have fallen so far.
We have fallen so far.
Yep.
I want that. That's like superhero quality.
Have you seen Ian? Have you seen the John Adams? It was a mini series produced by HBO.
No.
It's very worth your time. I'm not sure
fantastic.
where you could get it, whether it be on.
Yeah, I think it's still on HBO.
It's-
You can
it's
probably dig it up
great.
if it's.
It is so good. Paul Giamatti is John Adams,
Oh,
and
good.
he has an absolutely brilliant performance. It's
All
very,
right.
very, very worth your time.
Adams, man.
MT Pockets says, I'd love to see Tom McDonald on the cast, please. Tom McDonald is an open invite to come on whenever he wants, but he's a busy fella, so he's doing his thing.
Who's Tom McDonald?
He is a rapper. He's a
Canadian
good dude.
fellow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of really great music where his songs are about things we like.
Yeah.
You know,
And he's independent, which is awesome. Because
Right.
you really couldn't rap about what he does and be on a label. Like, you just couldn't do it.
People say the same thing about Ronnie Radke, and again, it's like he's pretty busy.
Yeah. Callie Gildenzoff says, inflation didn't bring women into the workforce. Feminism did. My college debt is why I'm working. I hate it. Well, why'd you go to college?
To get a
It's
job.
cultural.
Well, the left promotes inflation the way they promoted feminism. So same origin.
Oh, what do we got here?
One plays off the
Victor
off the other.
Papadopoulos says, after everything you discussed tonight, the corruption and two-tier justice system, can any of you give me 3 good reasons not to back Putin and Xi Jinping to the hilt? Our leaders are beyond redemption. Oh, I can give you some good reasons. 1, you think it's bad here? At least Joe Biden likes living here. Putin doesn't even own property here he doesn't have to live here. You can count on Joe Biden at least not wanting you vaporized in nuclear hellfire because it would mean his neighborhood and his servants can't give him cheesecake. There's 1. Same for Xi Jinping. That's like the best reason. And I'll give you another good reason. Because we want to win in the United States. We want to restore that shining city on the hill. We want to make sure that the rights enshrined by the founding fathers persist. You back them, you're basically throwing the Constitution in the toilet.
Yeah, you want states' rights. You don't want to back the Russians and the communist Chinese because they don't value states' rights like the way we do.
Yeah, when I'm critical towards,
They're also not American.
Yeah, well, let me just say real quick. When I'm critical towards the U.S., it is not that I'm saying the CCP or the Russian oligarchy is where I want to be. My point is we are too similar to them. And that's not a good thing. We need to get further away. We need to differentiate ourselves by focusing on actual capitalism, getting away from ESG and central bank digital currency and surveillance and the Federal Reserve and central banking and inflation and all this other nonsense. I'm trying to not be them. I'm not saying they're good, though.
All right, where are we at? Sea Warrior says, can people sue these judges and prosecutors that are attempting to interfere in our elections?
People is a big word in this regard. Judges typically are immune from lawsuits. My understanding, prosecutors, depending on the outcome of the case, can be sued. My understanding.
All right, let's read some more.
But
Raymond
who
G.
can sue? It would be the.
Someone
Let's say you're a
standing.
defendant. You it's clear that there was corruption in your prosecution.
Yeah. Raymond G. Stanley Jr. says, I don't get why libertarians call out conservatives, whom they conflate with Republicans, when they can't even get voted into any office besides Rand. Ron and Rand, both fairly libertarian, and they got elected. There are, would you say Thomas Massey's libertarian?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the vehicle. Libertarians just run as Republicans.
Yeah, Massey's one of our best guys. Look, here's the truth. The best conservatives you got are all libertarians. So don't give me this.
That's true.
Don't give me this that all the libertarian ideology you ain't getting the elections. Yeah, we just put on the mask of the GOP and then we get in there and we legislate like Ron Paul and you love us. So just be one of us.
We were joking about a bit earlier about political speed dating. And it's like 2 liberals sit down and one guy's like, I love Black Lives Matter. And the liberal woman is like, me too. And they get up and they walk out holding hands. Then the conservative sits down with another conservative and he's like, I think Jesus is our Lord and Savior. And she goes, I completely agree. And they get up, walk out holding hands. And then the libertarian sit down and one libertarian says, I do think we need borders. So borders? What? And they both start yelling at each other about who's the real libertarian. You're not a real libertarian.
Exactly. That's why none of us reproduce.
And I hear it as I thought it was the autism.
All right, John H says, I want to for Vivek, vote for Vivek, but Trump needs to win so the practice of lawfare ends. Right now it is escalating. They will keep indicting until SCOTUS intervenes. Then Dems will say SCOTUS is illegitimate too. Yeah, but we're talking about a primary. In a primary, I think if Vivek were to win, I'm very confident a lot of our problems are solved. I'm not saying all. I'm not saying everyone. I'm not saying it's revolution overnight. I'm not saying Vivek's going to save the world or anything. I'm saying he will be effective in many ways.
Massively. Watch his interview with Patrick Bet-David from last week. It was a town hall, actually. The guy is ready to go to China and Xi Jinping and put him.
But Trump's going to win the primary
in his seat.
There's one thing I want to say about Vivek as opposed to Trump. And this is not trying to knock on Trump or anything, but I do feel like Trump went into being the president completely naive about what reality is. And I feel like he got railroaded partly because of that naivete. I mean, there's definitely the power structure that exists is incredibly stacked against the president. But I think that Donald Trump was really, really naive, thinking that people in Washington would treat him like another president. Yeah. But I feel like Vivek is aware of what would happen. I feel like he wouldn't be going in. Now, I'm not saying that Donald Trump would go in not knowing not realizing that they've got, his number as well. But I also think that Donald Trump has a problem finding the right people to appoint, So I think that there's just a lot of things about Vivek that I think are actually better than Donald Trump.
And I think the personnel issue is going to be a priority for whoever the Republican nominee is, and
God, I
presumably
hope
they
so.
win. So
Jesus.
whether it be, I mean, it's likely to be President Trump if
With
on the
the
primary
RNC
side.
chair still winning, I have no faith in them. No, like the fact that what's her name?
Rhonda
whatever.
Yeah.
Like after Donald Trump lost and the 2020 election, and she gets the position again, no faith.
Ronna McDaniel.
McDaniel, that's it. What an embarrassment.
I agree with your assessment as to Trump's pitfalls in his first term. I think that the best ticket that they could possibly put up would be him with Vivek. And I know I've had Vivek on, and I love the guy, and I'm not trying to put him in the second slot, but he fills all of Trump's downfalls, like where he put up all these scumbags into every single department. Like Vivek is that guy. He's the guy that understands. He understands ESG and DEI and all this stuff. He can actually do the things where Trump couldn't figure it out. Vivek could do that.
One of the questions that Patrick Bet David asked him is like, well, there's a criticism that now that Trump's going in for the second time, he knows about who to appoint where. He's made the mistake before, and you don't have any experience, Vivek. So how do you respond to that? And his response was a bit incoherent, I'll say. I think maybe he didn't say it right then and there, but that is one of his weaknesses. Is he doesn't know exactly how to avoid the
inside
pitfalls.
of DC. Sure.
But he's so smart and like sensitive to how. To be honest, I don't know. I can't speak to Vivek on personnel issues. But one point he was like, Trump's on his way out. Kind of, he's old. He's already his best years for him have been and have gone. For Vivek, they're up and coming, and his future is bright. And he needs a better future because he has 2 young kids. They're 1 and 3. So a president that needs a better future will create a country that has a better future. A president that's on their way out and is just angry and pissed is going to turn the country into a country on its way out, and that is not what we want.
You don't want to nominate. You don't want a presidential, vice presidential candidate who's going to harm the ticket. Other than that, I don't think it matters. So, I mean, it's interesting politically who it is, but in terms of the operations of the White House, it's not going to make.
I'm in agreement with Tom. Like, I think that, like, just like you said, you don't want someone that hurts the ticket, but otherwise, it doesn't really matter. I mean, Kamala Harris didn't give anything to the Biden ticket.
Look,
so.
you guys are right historically. I'm just saying that with Trump's experience now, knowing what scumbags were surrounding him, he can actually pair that with the how-to. Like he can actually just use Vivek as a guy who's a real resource. Like Kamala Harris isn't capable of doing any of these things. Vivek is a legit capable half-billionaire 35-year-old or whatever.
37.
Yeah, 37. I mean, the
like
dude
5 months older
has
than me.
crushed it at every single thing he's done. If Trump doesn't utilize him, that would be a mistake.
He's also a pharmaceutical CEO, or was before he started, so he knows the entire pharmaceutical industry inside and out. He knows about how they're skimming off the top, what they're doing wrong,
And
how
he
they're
wants revenge.
Oh, dude, he's ready.
Yeah, his story of how he got started. We talked about it, how he wrote the book. Woke activists came for him, got board members to quit from his company, started attacking him, even though he was giving into what they wanted.
Yeah.
They wanted him to write a letter. He said, okay, I'll write the letter. He said the letter wasn't good enough. He was like, what do you want me to do? People started resigning, attacking him, and then he was just like, I'm dealing with this.
When I was
I'm like, I like that.
Yeah, when I was first deep diving ESG, when I had just started my show, Woke Inc. by Vivek was one of the first books I read on it that really like set me on this journey of understanding the high finance, like Marxist takeover of our economy. Vivek played that role. This was long before the presidential campaign was even a glimmer in his eye. I'm very impressed with the guy. I really am.
I'm wondering, should we give Roberto Jr. a Viking funeral? We have a pond at
Heck
Freedomistan.
yeah.
It's decently large, and we can make a little
pyre.
Viking boat.
Yeah, dude.
And
That
then
sounds
put him
awesome.
on it.
Put some
And then we'll
sprinklers
get a
on.
very, very small bow and arrow, and we'll just go right into it.
Oh, that's nice.
And then
Now, do you
I'll be there.
Do you eat the chickens?
we have not yet. My brother doesn't want to eat them. I'm all for eating. I'm just like, we got too many. Let's eat them. But nobody wants to eat them. So what we may do is I think we're gonna auction off some of them.
I'm not suggesting you cook the bird, by the way.
Oh,
Just-
not
We're
Roberto
not going to
Jr.
eat them raw, Tom.
Well-
What's wrong with you, man? What do you do?
What are you,
man?
Ozzy Osbourne?
So for his age, he probably would taste very good.
chicken sushi.
But he's a rooster. So roosters are very tough, and typically to have like rooster, you want to boil them in a pressure cooker or something because they're tough, manly meat. However, considering the way he died,
You don't want to eat them.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think the heart attack would cause like what is it? You don't want to eat animals that have adrenaline rushes or whatever like that.
Oh, adrenochrome.
No, like when you're hunting deer, for
True.
instance,
Oxidized adrenaline.
you don't want the deer to be adrenaline rush.
It's the shirt,
It's
right?
cortisol.
Shirt
I think a lot of it's cortisol.
Same idea, isn't it?
So I was out there eating chicken in front of the chickens. Do you guys ever do that? Just eat a piece of chicken
That's
while
just-
you're looking at them? It's crazy.
Sorry, I've
don't
been
care.
reading Q drops all day.
Bro, they eat each other. If a chicken dies in the coop, the other chickens will eat it.
Yeah, they're brutal.
Yeah,
They're-
they're like little dinosaurs, man.
People
they don't
like
care.
people say
I
they're
just want
birds
on
evolved from
a serious
dinosaurs.
note. These folks that get involved in conspiracy, we sell through government funding the fetal parts of aborted babies. There's a market for it. So they get focused on that. Well, they're selling thymuses and skulls and of aborted unborn human beings.
Unreal.
And so that's why my chief thing with so-called conspiracy theories. It's the truth is often worse than what they're distracted
It's
by.
a misdirect.
I got to read
Yeah.
this. Jason Hutchinson, I didn't see the super chat till just now, but he sent it a half an hour ago. He said, to fund a Viking funeral for the noble rooster. Send a super chat.
Heck yeah.
Well, I was thinking about it because I'm all about Viking funeral.
Yep.
And we have a pond at Freedomistan that it's big enough to where we could easily put them on a little boat and just,
Like a little wooden raft with like a couple of 2 liters filled with some flammable material.
I wouldn't want to burn plastic.
Yeah,
I
I
would
wouldn't
want to actually carve a little boat.
Can we put like some flammable material in like wood that will catch and like really create a nice blaze?
Yeah, that's what you do. You little-
Can we put like a
floating fire.
propane tank right underneath it?
no.
So
The
just-
Explosive end of.
We don't
Roberto
want the
Jr.
fire to spread outside of the pond.
All you need, you just get a couple little charcoals
Smell delicious.
on each end.
People are
because
someone's
you're-
gonna drive by
you're
like, you
literally-
guys having a barbecue? Nope, Viking funeral for our rooster.
we won't eat our chickens, but we will put them on
Hey.
fires.
Roberto Jr. was hatched and raised by me and my girlfriend Allison, and we raised him here in the house, and we would hold him, and he was in a little cage with his sisters, and then once they got decently big, we transferred him outside and let them live amongst their own kind.
Was he out-
He was always super chill and really relaxed around people. He was really nice.
Yeah, he was great.
Was he the one? Was he down in Chicken City, but in like a little room, or was he in another area?
He was in Chicken City. He was in a little
I loved
room.
the way he screams. I did it before. I think that's him. That's gonna be rough not hearing that
Oh
anymore.
no, I love that.
It was just
But
like
I
it would
just wanna
start
say-
strong and then it would.
The last thing I want to say is just to mention that point where, so when this happens and we're trying to resuscitate him, I walk back into the house and then I hear a bunch of weird squawking, and then I came out and everyone's standing there and the chickens lined up and we're like yelling and we were there. I was like, what? And like the chickens just all lined up, looked over.
It
and
was
started yelling.
spontaneous as all get out. It was amazing. It was really like touching, and I don't even know Roberto that well,
There were a bunch of humans standing out there, so maybe that's why. But
No,
maybe they sensed it.
we
but
go
it-
out there all the time.
But it was
That
like a
weird.
10-minute lag time before they just were like, all right, now's the time. It was like his spirit was leaving, and they're like,
Yeah.
I thought he was alive still, man. I had hope. I gotta not
we
do that.
we
to
took an
myself.
O2 canister and Kim put it in his beak and held it tight and pumped air into his lungs.
They tried everything.
But his heart was done.
I mean,
All right.
Did you get a video of doing that?
No. We were more concerned with trying to save him, and his doodle, his waddle was changing purple, and
Yeah.
we tried.
it was a very somber moment.
All right, everybody, if you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and if you do like the show, please consider sharing it with your friends, because that's how podcasts grow. Head over to timcast.com, because we've got this very interesting story about a second corpse found in the Arizona State Capitol, and we're going to get very, very conspiratorial. So that uncensored members only show will be up in a few minutes. Check it out. You can follow the show at TimCast IRL. You can follow me personally at TimCast on X. Where's my money, Elon? I didn't get paid. But everyone else got paid. I had 175 million impressions on X. Where's my money, Elon? X apparently not going to give it to you. Tom, do you want to shout anything out?
Yo,
Excellent, give it to you.
Tim with bars.
X gonna give it to you.
Judicialwatch.org. Support Judicial Watch. Join our movement. Join our cause. I'm on X too, at Tom Fitton, and of course at Judicial Watch. They're coming after all of us, so support us.
Clint Russell, Liberty Lockdown at Liberty Lock Pod on X. I've never said that before. I'm accustomed to Twitter. But you are able to subscribe to me if you'd like to support my show. It is called Liberty Lockdown, and I will be having on the QAnon Shaman tomorrow. I will also be on with Shamer on his show tomorrow. And then a couple days after that, I've got Max Blumenthal, who was supposed to debate RFK Jr. He's going to come on Liberty Lockdown. It's going to be incredible. And then next week, Dave Smith for episode 300. God bless America. Check out Tower Gang. I'm out of here.
I am Phil Labonte. I am Phil That Remains on Twitter. I'm Phil That Remains Official on Instagram. The band is All That Remains. We are All That Remains on Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora, and the YouTubes.
Ian Crossland, I'm also on X, which makes me think of it. X is like a drug that Elon will produce in the future that's a pill you take. And he's like, are you on X? And that'll mean that the social network's in your brain.
Bro, X is ecstasy.
Yeah. Ooh, geez. It's going to feel real good.
I'm going to be double Xing.
Hey, Tom, always thank you for the work you're doing, man.
Oh, you're welcome.
Incredible.
Happy to do it.
Yeah,
glad to be able to do it because we can't do it in any other country other than the United States for all the yapping and complaining. God bless America.
Awesome.
Amen.
All right. Love you, man. Catch you later.
I am still on Twitter. It's still Twitter on my phone. My name is Serge.com. I'm not going to say X. I'm not going to say it. You guys can until it's on my phone. I'm not going to say it. I'm not like almost like 10,000 people, which is insane. I don't know why you guys follow me. I don't say anything useful. But I'm ready for this after show. Let's get to it, Tim.
All right, everybody. We will see you all over at timcast.com in a few minutes. Thanks for hanging out.